Over the past 2 years, I've devoted my life to tell you the greatest football stories of the greatest football players. So today, I've put together 10 of the very best of these stories for you to enjoy. So without further ado, we begin with the abandoned boy who became a football superstar, Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne was abandoned by his foster family, his girlfriend cheated on him with his teammate, and at his lowest point, his manager threw him out of the club as the media labeled him a flop. But despite a life of rejection, Kevin refused to quit and managed to become one of the greatest football players ever. So, how did Kevin go from reject to football superstar? This is the full story of Kevin De Bruyne.
What can this guy not do? Lifted back towards De Bruyne! Absolute belter from Kevin De Bruyne. There is no stopping that. There's no one quite like him.
On the 28th of June 1991, Kevin De Bruyne was born. He grew up in a small town in Belgium called Drongen, where he had quite a normal life, but as a child, he only had one thing on his mind, and that was football. Growing up, Kevin always used to play football in the garden and would end up breaking pot after pot. Because of this, Kevin's parents didn't allow him to use his right foot in the garden anymore. This would prove to be instrumental for Kevin, as today his ability to play with both feet is something that sets him apart from even most pro players. At 6 years of age, Kevin joined his local football academy, where he would quickly establish himself as the best player. Now, Kevin was a very shy kid, but when it came to football, he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. He would often get frustrated and shout at the other kids because they just weren't at his level. De Bruyne knew that he needed to be around better players, so at just 8 years old, Kevin signed for the Ghent Academy, which was the best football club around his hometown. Kevin spent 6 years at Ghent, where the same thing happened. Kevin was clearly the best player, and Kevin was very unhappy with the quality of his teammates. Shy and weird off the pitch, but loud and angry on the pitch. So, when the best football club in Belgium knocked on his door, Kevin just couldn't refuse. So at 14 years old, Kevin moved to the other side of the country by himself to join the Ghent Academy, where life would start to get very tough for the kid. Kevin De Bruyne describes the first 2 years he spent at Genk as the loneliest years of his life. Because Kevin was still a kid, the Genk Academy had organized a foster family for Kevin to stay with during the season. Now, remember, Kevin was a shy kid, so he would always keep to himself. He had no troubles in school. He just put his head down and focused on football. When this year came to an end, Kevin was happy. He said goodbye to his foster parents, and they told him that they would see him soon. Kevin returned home for the summer, and his parents greeted him with a disappointed look on their faces. "What's wrong?" Kevin asked. Kevin's parents told him that the foster family didn't want him back. Kevin was confused and asked, "Why is this happening?" But then he would hear 6 words that would stay with him forever. "It's because of who you are." The foster family didn't want Kevin back because he was too quiet. He was weird and difficult to handle. Kevin felt betrayed. And because of this, he had no family to stay with in the next season, and to make matters even worse, the foster parents told the club he was a troubled kid, so they refused to pay for a new foster family for Kevin to stay with. Kevin was sent to a boarding school. But this wasn't a normal boarding school. This was a boarding school for troubled kids. Kevin would remember those 6 words. It's because of who you are. And as you will see time and time again from Kevin, he turned this anger and rejection into fuel and motivation. He promised his parents that within 2 months of returning, he would make it into the Genk first team. In his first month back, Kevin was placed on the bench in a youth match, and this is when everything changed. At halftime, he was subbed on, and with the words of the foster family ringing in his head, he unleashed all his anger and pain. And to quote Kevin directly, 1 goal, they don't want you anymore. 2 goals, too quiet. 3 goals, too difficult. 4 goals, they don't want you anymore. 5 goals, because of who you are. I scored 5 goals in 1 half. This was the turning point for Kevin, as this performance resulted in a first team call-up. He kept his promise to his parents with a couple days to spare. After this, something strange happened. The foster parents who didn't want Kevin came back to say that the whole situation was a misunderstanding. They realized that Kevin was a star in the making, and they regretted their decision. Now, this would become a recurring theme in Kevin's life. He'd get rejected, he would turn the pain into fuel, and the rejecter would live to regret their decision. Kevin simply told the foster parents, "No, you threw me in the garbage. Now I'm doing well, you want me back?" Kevin was finally on track to achieving his dream. He had become a professional football player. In May of 2009, Kevin De Bruyne made his first team debut for Genk, where he'd spend the next couple years of his career. With each season that passed, Kevin just kept getting better and better. In 2011, De Bruyne helped this Genk team to win the Belgian Pro League for only the third time in the club's history. He did this alongside his teammate and friend Thibaut Courtois. At this time, Kevin also started dating a girl named Caroline, but these two people would go on to betray Kevin in the worst way possible. But we'll get to that soon. For now, things were looking great for Kevin. He had also made his debut for the Belgian national team in a friendly match against Finland. This was the start of Belgium's golden generation, with a squad full of talents like De Bruyne, Hazard, and compagnie. But most importantly, at this time, Kevin was finally happy and was regarded as one of the best young talents in Europe. This saw many of Europe's top clubs come knocking for his signature, but in the end, he opted for a £7 million move to Chelsea, where he signed a 5-year contract. Kevin was seen as the next Frank Lampard, as the Chelsea fans hoped he would be able to take over from the legend himself. The plan for De Bruyne was that he would go straight out on loan in his first season to get first-team action. So for the 2012-13 season, Kevin went on loan to Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga. In this season, De Bruyne picked up 10 goals and 9 assists, which was the best tally to date. He also won the Bundesliga Young Player of the Year award, as he was a standout performer throughout the entire season. As this season came to an end, Kevin returned to Chelsea and was going to be loaned out again because many German clubs wanted to get their hands on him. But Chelsea had a new manager in town called Jose Mourinho, who called Kevin and simply told him, "You're staying. I want you to be a part of this team." Kevin remained at Chelsea, but little did he know that his whole life was about to fall apart both on and off the pitch. Kevin De Bruyne and his girlfriend Caroline had been together for 3 years when Caroline decided to take an unexpected trip to Madrid. In Madrid, Kevin's friend and international teammate Thibaut Courtois met up with his girlfriend, and they had an affair together. To make matters even worse, Caroline took to an interview to say, "That evening, Thibaut offered me what I had not received from a 3-year relationship with Kevin." When this all happened, Kevin felt betrayed. His teammate and his love both betrayed him. The Belgian coach spoke to Kevin about this and gave him the opportunity to ban Courtois from the national team, but Kevin had mercy. He decided to keep a professional relationship with him despite what had just happened. He would eventually get his revenge against Thibaut, but more on that later. This situation sent Kevin into a dark place, which affected his performances on the pitch. One morning in December, Jose Mourinho called Kevin into his office, where he told Kevin 1 assist, 0 goals, 10 recoveries. Jose then started to read off the stats of the other midfielders in the Chelsea team, and this is when Kevin realized he had no future at Chelsea. He was no longer in Mourinho's plans. Within a couple weeks, Kevin was sold to Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, where things looked bleak. Kevin had been hurt before, but never this bad. This was an all-time low, as his girlfriend left him for his teammate, and his manager sold him for not being good enough. But this was just fuel for Kevin. He took the pain and turned it into energy, as he was about to make a career comeback. So halfway through the 2013-14 season, at 22 years old, Kevin landed in Wolfsburg angry and ready to prove everyone wrong. He quickly adapted to their style of play and started to rebuild his confidence. He said this period in Wolfsburg is where everything changed, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch too, because this is when he met his future wife. He saw this girl liking his tweets and wanted to send her a message, but was too scared, so his friend just took his phone and sent the message for him. Kevin just needed that push to get out of his shell, and just like that, he met the love of his life. With life turning around for Kevin, he pushed on to the next season with Wolfsburg with magic in his boots. He finished the season with 16 goals and 28 assists, breaking the Bundesliga assist record. Wolfsburg finished second in the Bundesliga, also winning the German Cup. Kevin De Bruyne was so impressive this year that he was named as the Bundesliga Player of the Season. This stellar season from Kevin saw Manchester City come knocking on his door. Kevin wanted to give the Premier League another go, so he signed for Man City at 24 years old and for a total of £55 million. The English media claimed it was a waste of money for a Chelsea reject, but yet again, Kevin was ready to prove the doubters wrong. His first season got off to a great start where he was scoring big goals in big games, but halfway through the season, in a game against Everton, he suffered a bad knee injury which would see him out for a couple of months. At this same time, his now wife was 8 months pregnant with his first child. Kevin felt helpless because he was on crutches and couldn't help her, but they managed to get through, and Kevin now says that this was a key moment in his life where he found something more important than football, and that was his family. But of course, Kevin returned to football as he recovered from the injury, and he returned with a bang, scoring on his first game back. This first season with Man City was a strong one for Kevin. He had returned to the Premier League and proved that he was good enough. As the season ended, Pep Guardiola was announced as the new Man City manager, as a new dynasty was about to begin in the Premier League. The first time Pep and De Bruyne spoke, Pep told him, "Kevin, listen, you can be easily a top 5 player in the world. Top 5, easily." This was a new feeling for Kevin because for the first time in his career, he didn't have to prove someone wrong. He didn't have to fight rejection or use anger as fuel. Now he had a manager who really believed in him, and all he had to do was prove him right. The 16-17 season was a foundational one for Pep and Man City, but Kevin was on fire, scoring 7 and bagging 21 assists for the season. No major trophies, but he finished 14th in the Ballon d'Or. This meant Kevin was the 14th best player in the world. This was good, but not top 5. In the 2017-18 season, Man City took over the Premier League, finishing with a record-breaking 100 points. Kevin was an integral part of this team, chipping in with 12 goals and 21 assists. This year also saw Belgium reach a record 3rd place finish in the World Cup. This was the peak of this Belgian generation of stars. Many think that the team could have and should have won a major trophy, but clearly something was off in this team. It might be down to the fact that teammates sleep with each other's girlfriends, but still, this was a great achievement for Kevin and Belgium. This year saw Kevin finish 9th in the Ballon d'Or, just 4 spots away from proving Pep right. 18-19 was a tougher year for Kevin as he suffered another big injury, leaving him out for a large portion of the season, although he still picked up a domestic treble, winning the Premier League and the 2 cup competitions. In 2020, Kevin missed out on the Premier League, but still wrote his name in history by recording 20 Premier League assists in a single season. This meant he equaled the record that was held by Thierry Henry, proving that he was one of the greatest playmakers to ever play the game. He was also named as the Premier League Player of the Season, meaning he was factually the best player in England, but because of COVID, this year's Ballon d'Or was cancelled, so we couldn't really track Kevin's world ranking position. But don't worry, because the year after, in 2021, he finished 8th in the Ballon d'Or, the 8th best player in the world. That's great, but not top 5. Now, 2022, another Premier League came City's way as Kevin contributed with 19 goals and 15 assists. Kevin was named the Premier League Player of the Season, and more importantly, Kevin placed 3rd in the Ballon d'Or ranking. He was officially the 3rd best player in the world. He proved Pep right. He was great, but once wasn't enough for Kevin because in 2023 he placed 3rd in the Ballon d'Or once again, but this season was bigger than that. He completed the historic treble with Manchester City by winning the Premier League, the Champions League, and the FA Cup. He wrote his name in footballing history. And one more important thing happened this season. In the build-up to the Champions League final, Man City faced Real Madrid, meaning Kevin De Bruyne faced Thibaut Courtois, and in the first leg, Kevin got his revenge. He also was instrumental in a 4-0 win in the second leg, but I'm just seeing some sweet justice in that first leg wonder goal. But now, here we are. 2024, Kevin De Bruyne is 32 years old. He's won countless trophies both individually and as a team. He's overcome the rejection of his foster family, the betrayal of his teammate, proved everyone who doubted him wrong, and proved everyone who stuck by him right. He's undoubtedly one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and he's still in his prime, so I'm sure he's going to continue writing his name in the history of football. But now it's time for an even crazier story because Jamie Vardy really had a party. At 20 years old, Jamie Vardy was nothing more than a hooligan playing Sunday League football with an ankle monitor on his feet. At 25 years old, he was just a full-time factory worker playing non-league football for Fleetwood Town. But within 3 more years, at 28 years old, Jamie Vardy would be lifting the Premier League title as he became the best striker in the entire country. But how on earth did he get there? How did this Sunday League hooligan, whose pre-match diet was a mix of beers and Red Bulls, go on to dominate the entire Premier League? Well, to understand how we got there, we have to go back to 1987, where life began for Jamie Vardy. He was born in Sheffield, but right from the start, the odds were stacked against him because when he was just an infant, his father walked out on him, leaving the family to struggle by themselves. Jamie grew up struggling in the neighborhood of Hillsborough, where he dreamed of playing for local club Sheffield Wednesday, and that dream looked like coming true when Sheffield Wednesday gave him a chance as a youth player. But then suddenly, Vardy's dream was cruelly snatched away from him aged 16 when Sheffield Wednesday released him for being too small, and it looked like his football career was over before it even got started, as Vardy quit football entirely, saying, "Everything I'd ever wanted had just been snatched away, and there was nothing to fill that huge void. I was lost." And to add insult to injury, he had a growth spurt just after being released, as he was now left with a feeling that he wasn't good enough. It was also around that time that he began to have many arguments with his mother and stepfather, which pushed Jamie to move out and start working odd jobs just to make ends meet. But it wouldn't be long before he stepped back onto the football pitch, because after a few months, he joined a local pub team before a friend helped him by getting him into Stocksbridge Park Steels, a tiny club in the 8th tier of English football, who have just over 100 supporters in a league where career-ending two-footed tackles were the norm. But Stocksbridge, like many of England's tiny clubs, also played in the preliminary rounds of the FA Cup, which would help Vardy achieve a rather unique record later in his career. Stocksbridge gave Vardy his first contract in football, paying him £30 a week, which barely pays for a night out in Sheffield. But Vardy says, "I'd never earned anything through football before, so I was happy to get that." But that money wouldn't go so far to make ends meet. Vardy had to work in a local carbon fiber factory, lifting heavy items into hot ovens, which was starting to damage his back, and things were about to get a whole lot worse for Vardy, as one night in Sheffield, he was drinking with a friend who had a hearing aid when some other men started mocking his friend, and Vardy got into a fight but got arrested and charged with assault, so the court ordered that he had to wear an ankle monitor and wasn't allowed out of his house at nighttime, which made playing football for Stocksbridge almost impossible, and in some games, he could only play the first half, then jump over a fence into a car waiting to get home before his 6 p.m. curfew. But Vardy said his ankle monitor was so strong that it actually protected him from bad tackles, and that assault charge ended up saving his career, because not long after, Vardy almost quit football entirely to join the army, but at the recruitment office, he had to admit to his criminal record, so he was denied from joining, which turned out to be a lucky break, as Vardy would soon start to get noticed, including in an FA Cup game where Stocksbridge lost 7-2, but Vardy was the best player on the pitch and was seen as a ridiculously fit, bullish, and confident player. Vardy would go on to score 55 goals in 115 games for Stocksbridge Park Steels, helping the team win promotion. And soon enough, other clubs began to be interested in Vardy, including nearby Halifax Town, who played in the same league but were a bigger club than Stocksbridge. But still, people warned Halifax's manager not to sign Vardy, saying he had a bad reputation, a criminal record, and a tendency to get red cards. But Halifax ignored all that advice and signed Vardy for £15,000. Now, Vardy thrived at Halifax, where he scored 25 goals and was named the team's player of the season as they won promotion, and it wasn't long before he was signed by Fleetwood Town for a club record fee of £150,000, which is 10 times what Halifax paid, and now Fleetwood were in the 5th tier of English football, and this was a massive step up. But some of the players couldn't understand why Fleetwood had signed Vardy, saying they'd never heard of him. But now that Vardy had quit his job, he could focus full-time on football for the first time in his life, and it showed, as he was the fittest and fastest player on the team, and his aggressive nature gave him the nickname the Cannon. But he still sometimes got into trouble, such as wrapping the physio's car in a cling film as a birthday present, and one time when he missed training, he had to do a naked run in the freezing cold. But his performances were starting to get him noticed by bigger sides, and after scoring one game, he replied to abusive opposition fans on Facebook with his no-famous catchphrase, "Chat shit, get banged," and he just kept scoring, with football league teams now putting in huge bids for him, including Blackpool offering a crazy £750,000, but Fleetwood turned that bid down and wanted to keep their star striker. It was almost unfair on Fleetwood's opponents, as he smashed in 31 goals to help Fleetwood get promoted. And now, at 25 years old, the then championship side Leicester City made a huge £1 million bid for him, which would be the record highest ever bid for a non-league player. So, just like that, Vardy made the move to the Football League at the age of 25 after spending his entire life in non-league. But whilst you know of the success Vardy had with Leicester, it wasn't easy at all. In fact, things were only getting tougher from here. But very quickly, I just want to ask you to subscribe. Thank you. Jamie Vardy started life at Leicester by scoring against Torquay United in the League Cup on his debut, and would get 3 goals and 2 assists in his first 8 league games, but then he hit a massive loss in form, only scoring once more all season, getting dropped to the bench alongside a young striker called Harry Kane. Ever heard of him? At this time, Vardy was having a huge crisis in confidence. Fans were giving him abuse on social media, and Vardy was even thinking about giving up football. He said, "It was tough. I came into a dressing room with a lot of big names in, and I wasn't used to it whatsoever." Leicester's vice chairman even said that Vardy would go drinking every day and even turn up to training drunk. And one time he got injured with a dead leg, which wasn't getting better, so the physio asked Vardy about his habits, and he admitted that every night when he got home, he would mix Skittles candy with alcohol and drink it, which was stopping his leg from healing because his blood was basically all alcohol. He said he was struggling with not being the main man, so just went drinking and smoking with his mates instead and would stay up till 4 a.m. But despite all this, his head coach Nigel Pearson and assistant coach Craig Shakespeare never stopped believing in Vardy's talent, and even though Vardy was thinking of quitting football and becoming a nightclub rep in Ibiza, his coaches constantly told Vardy how good he could be, and these chats helped Jamie regain his confidence until he finally quit drinking booze and spent all summer working on his fitness. But going against your usual fitness advice, Vardy came up with the new routine of drinking 3 cans of Red Bull and a double espresso before each game, which made him run around like a nut job. But it paid off big time, as he scored 16 goals the following season and was named Players' Player of the Season as Leicester won promotion to the Premier League, which Vardy said was a dream come true, and that he had to pinch himself to remind him that it was real. But going from non-league to the Premier League is almost impossible, and it appeared to be a step too far for Vardy. And even though he had an incredible game against Manchester United, scoring 1 and getting 2 assists, as well as winning 2 penalties in September in a performance that shocked the football world, he wouldn't score another Premier League goal until March, as Leicester plummeted down the table to rock bottom with 9 games to go. And this is where the greatest story in football history truly begins. Leicester looked destined for relegation and couldn't win a single game until the last game of March. They looked dead and buried. But just in time, Vardy finally scored again, and although Leicester lost that match 4-3, Vardy refound his mojo, and Leicester won their next 4 games, with Vardy scoring a vital last-minute winner against West Brom, and then the only goal of the game against Burnley to pull Leicester up to 17th. But a loss against Chelsea in their next game put the pressure right back on. Leicester won 3 of their final 4 games to secure their spot in the Premier League in one of the most incredible survival stories in English history, becoming the first team ever to avoid relegation from the Premier League with less than 20 points from their first 29 games. Vardy finished that season with 5 Premier League goals, but his end-of-season form led to one of the highlights of any player's career, as just 3 seasons after playing in non-league, Vardy was called up to represent the England national team, with Roy Hodgson saying he had watched him since he was at Fleetwood Town. But Vardy's self-doubt started to creep in again, as he believed he wasn't good enough for England and almost didn't join up with the national team. But in the end, he showed up and he loved it. He fit in great, even giving Maguire his infamous nickname Slabhead, and that gave Vardy even more desire to show the world what he could do. But as he returned to Leicester that summer, the club would be plunged into turmoil, as after the season had finished, the manager Nigel Pearson was sacked, and without their talismanic head coach, Leicester were now favourites for relegation, especially when it was announced that their new head coach would be Claudio Ranieri, whose previous job saw him have a win percentage of 0 with the Greek national team. But even worse, Leicester lost its star player Esteban Cambiasso in the summer, while signing several unknown players like N'Golo Kante. So it was no surprise that Ranieri was predicted to be the first manager sacked that season, with the Guardian newspaper saying if they want someone to keep them in the Premier League, they may have gone for the wrong guy. But as you know, that next season, Jamie Vardy was about to have a party in the Prem. He started the season well, scoring Leicester's first goal of the 2015-16 season as they beat Sunderland 4-2. But after that, Vardy would blank against West Ham and Spurs, but he would score again in the next game with a late penalty against Bournemouth to start an incredible goal-scoring run, hitting the net against Villa and Stoke before his first Premier League double against Arsenal. Leicester lost that match, making it their first loss of the season, and many people thought their surprise good start was over, with the BBC saying they'd ridden their luck and had a leaky defense. After all, their chances of winning the Premier League title were 5,000 to 1, but Leicester won the next game against Norwich, with Vardy scoring again despite having a broken wrist. And then he got another brace against Southampton to give him 9 goals in 9 games, but his goal-scoring run just wouldn't stop, and his goal in the next game against Crystal Palace made him only one of 3 Premier League players to score in 8 Premier League games in a row, and now everybody was taking notice of Jamie Vardy and wondering how long he could keep scoring for. But in his next game against West Brom, Vardy went down injured, and it looked like his run would end. But after lengthy treatment, he returned to the game and scored moments later with a 77th minute goal before making it 10 games in a row by scoring a penalty against Watford, equaling the record held by Ruud van Nistelrooy. And Vardy went one further to claim the record for himself in the next game before scoring against Manchester United to mean he had scored for 12 Premier League games in a row. And while his run had to end sometime, his blank in the next game didn't stop Leicester from winning 3-0 and going to the top of the Premier League table in what was shaping up to be the most impossible season in football. But still, everybody expected their incredible run to end soon, with lifelong Leicester fan Gary Lineker even promising to present Match of the Day in his underwear if Leicester won the league, saying that there was zero chance that they would win. But even though a small blip a few games later dropped them down to second, they just kept winning and regained top spot in January, leading people to start suggesting Leicester's season would be made into a movie, with Claudio Ranieri suggesting Vardy would be played by Robert De Niro. And around this time, Vardy would score his first goal for England in a 3-2 win against Germany, as well as scoring this absolutely insane volley against Liverpool. Absolutely unstoppable. But despite the pressure of actually having a chance to win the league, Leicester would hold on to the top spot, and in April, Vardy scored 3 more key goals until his hothead attitude saw him sent off against Swansea for diving. But Leicester kept holding on until the start of May, when they drew with Manchester United and would be confirmed as Premier League champions as long as the team in second didn't win. But luckily for Leicester, the team in second was Tottenham Hotspur, so there was no doubt at all. So Vardy held a watch party at his house as Spurs predictably bottled it and failed to beat Chelsea. So Leicester won the title and completed the most incredible season in Premier League history, winning the title by 10 points, with Vardy scoring 24 goals and getting 6 assists. And due to his incredible season, Vardy was named as the Premier League Player of the Season and even came 8th in the voting for the Ballon d'Or, which was the best performance by an Englishman for 10 years and an insane achievement for someone who had been playing almost amateur football a few years before. Now, after this season, it was no shock that the Leicester team was going to get raided by the bigger clubs, and unsurprisingly, everyone wanted to sign Vardy, with Arsenal making a huge offer of £22 million that triggered Vardy's release clause. But Jamie Vardy remembered how Leicester stuck by him in the toughest of times and rejected Arsenal, and that season he even scored for Leicester in the Champions League quarter-final and would score this wonder goal that even Dennis Bergkamp would be proud of, and was named BBC Goal of the Season. But Leicester would sell other stars like Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante and would fall down the league. And then they would hire Claude Puel as head coach, but he soon decided Vardy was the problem, deciding to drop Vardy, which enraged Leicester fans and caused Vardy's wife to like a bunch of tweets criticizing the head coach's tactics. But Vardy was now in his 30s, and some pundits were suggesting he was too old for the Premier League. But soon enough, Puel was sacked, and new boss Brendan Rodgers would believe in him, and then Vardy did something incredible that proves he wasn't just a one-season wonder. Aged 33, he scored an incredible 23 goals in the 2019-20 season, including his 100th Premier League goal, and was named the top scorer in the Premier League, making him the oldest player to win the Premier League Golden Boot. And the next year, Leicester City reached the FA Cup final, meaning that Vardy was the first player ever to play in every single round of the competition, including all the preliminary rounds when he was at Stocksbridge. And of course, Leicester won the FA Cup that season, making for yet another historic achievement for a player who was playing amateur football not too long before. Today, Vardy sits at 38 years old, still playing for Leicester City, as he refused to leave the club that believed in him when nobody else did. But now from England to France, because it's time for the story of Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe was born in a small French town known for crime, riots, and poverty. But against all odds, Mbappe fought his way to the top of the world to become the face of football. So, how did Kylian escape poverty and become football's biggest star? This is the full story of Kylian Mbappe. On the 20th of December 1998, Kylian Mbappe was born. This was just 6 months after France lifted their first ever World Cup, but little did the world know that thanks to Kylian, it wouldn't be their last. Mbappe was born in a Parisian suburb named Bondy. This was the poorest area in Paris, known for its high crime rate and frequent riots, meaning Mbappe's upbringing was far from one of luxury. He was born to two immigrant parents who both had a passion for sports. His mother Faiza is an Algerian handball player, whilst his father Wilfred is a football coach from Cameroon who coached Kylian as a kid. Kylian also has a brother named Ethan who's 9 years younger than him, thus completing the Mbappe family. At 6 years old, Kylian began his footballing journey, and even from such a young age, his coaches could tell that he had something the other kids didn't. He was much faster than everyone and had much better dribbling. He was soon scouted by one of the best academies in France and made the move from Bondy to Clairefontaine Academy, which was the academy responsible for talents such as Olivier Giroud, Nicolas Anelka, and Thierry Henry. Through his teenage years, Mbappe idolized many top football players, but there was one player that stood out above the rest, and that was Cristiano Ronaldo. He grew up dreaming about playing for Real Madrid to follow in the footsteps of his idol, but little did he know that Real were about to come knocking on his door. At age 14, as Mbappe was rising the ranks at Clairefontaine, he had all the big clubs trying to get his signature. Real Madrid, Chelsea, and Liverpool all tried to sign him, but in the end, he opted to move to Monaco, as over there he could see a clear route to the first team. So at 14 years old, Kylian Mbappe committed the next 3 years of his life to Monaco, where things were about to get very crazy for him. After 2 years in the Monaco Academy, Mbappe was brought in to train with the reserve team, but was so impressive that it only took him 3 weeks to get promoted to first team training. Not soon after, Kylian Mbappe would make his debut for Monaco, coming on as a late substitute in a league game against Caen. This debut made Kylian the youngest player to ever play for Monaco at just 16 years and 347 days old, beating the record that was previously held by Thierry Henry. A couple months later, on the 20th of February 2016, Mbappe would score his first career goal, becoming Monaco's youngest ever goal scorer, breaking another one of Henry's records. 1 month later, Monaco knew they had a talent on their hands and they had to secure him at the club, so they gave him his first pro contract. Mbappe signed a 3-year deal with Monaco, where he was given the number 29. This first season was a developmental one for the young Frenchman. He finished the season with 11 league appearances and 1 goal, but everyone around him knew that he was going to be a star. In an interview with CNN, the Monaco vice president said that he knew very early on that Mbappe was going to be a phenomenon, and he was about to be proved very right. Going into the 16-17 season with Monaco, Mbappe was ready to show the world what he could really do. Monaco signed striker Radamel Falcao, whom Mbappe formed a killer partnership with. Monaco had also put together the most exciting young team in the world, bringing a level of excitement and youthfulness to their style of play. As the season progressed, Mbappe quickly cemented himself as a key player in the team. He picked up his first hat-trick in December in the French Cup, and then another hat-trick in the league shortly after. Mbappe would also go on to announce himself in the Champions League, as Monaco had a historic run in the competition. 6 Champions League goals from Mbappe, but most notably, a goal in each leg against Manchester City, which was an absolute thriller of a tie, and then a brace against Dortmund in the quarterfinals, where Mbappe dropped his iconic arms cross celebration for the first time. He says this celebration came from his younger brother, who used to celebrate like that whenever he would beat him in FIFA. A semi-final defeat to Juventus saw this beloved Monaco team get sent home, but they wouldn't be too worried. They managed to dethrone PSG, who had won the last 4 league titles with ease. Mbappe finished the season with 26 goals and 11 assists, his first league title and a debut for the French national team back in March. This stellar season from Monaco saw Europe's biggest clubs come knocking. Mendy, Silva, and Bakayoko all made a move to the Premier League, but Mbappe wanted to stay in France, and luckily there was one club that was so desperate to get Mbappe's signature that they would make an offer that Kylian just couldn't refuse. PSG were putting together a team of stars. They spent 220 million euros on Neymar early in the summer, and they were about to drop another 180 million on Mbappe, but due to financial fair play, they weren't allowed to spend all that in one summer, so they had to structure the signing as a 1-year loan, with the purchase being completed the following summer. Kylian's younger brother Ethan also got signed to the PSG Academy as a part of the deal, but that was it. Kylian had made the move to the French capital to play alongside Neymar for the biggest team in France at just 18 years old. Mbappe arrived in Paris with a lot of hype, and it's safe to say he stepped up. A debut goal in the league in a 5-1 demolition against Metz, and just 4 days later, he picked up another debut goal in the Champions League against Celtic. The 17-18 season started off electric for Mbappe and PSG. 27 goals in just 6 group stage games really put this PSG attack in the eyes of the world. Mbappe picked up 4 of those goals, making him the youngest player to ever reach 10 Champions League goals. Unfortunately for Mbappe, he couldn't continue this Champions League run as PSG got sent home by Real Madrid in the round of 16. This Champions League elimination forced PSG to shift focus onto the domestic competitions, which they dominated. 13 league goals for Mbappe helped PSG to win the league, showing that from one season to another, Kylian Mbappe was the one who made the difference. Mbappe also lifted another 3 domestic trophies, even bagging a goal in the Coupe de France final against RBA. This was a strong season for Paris, but everyone had just one question for Mbappe. He can do it in the French league, but can he do it on the world's biggest stage? Going into the 2018 World Cup, France were marked as one of the favorites, having just come off a final loss in the Euros to Portugal. This time, they had something different. They had a diamond on their side. They had Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe was given the iconic number 10 jersey to wear for France, as manager Didier Deschamps knew he was going to steal the show. France comfortably won their group, with Mbappe picking up 1 goal against Peru. This goal was significant as he became the youngest French player to ever score at a World Cup. In the round of 16, France were drawn against Argentina. Messi versus Mbappe, the future of football against the now. This game did not disappoint. A 4-3 thriller where Mbappe stole the show. 2 goals from Kylian and also a penalty that he won saw his French side edge out Messi's Argentina in a legendary football match. Is the game where Mbappe found himself as one of the world's best, as he showed up on the biggest stage in the world against the best player in the world and won. But his job wasn't finished. The quarterfinal against Uruguay, victory. Semifinal against Belgium, victory. This left Kylian 1 match away from writing his name in the history of football. 20 years after France lifted their only World Cup, they had the chance to make it 2.
Here's Mbappe! Oh my word! Are the champions of the world!
World champion at 19 years old with a goal in the final too. This made him only the second teenager to score in a World Cup final after the one and only Pelé. Kylian also picked up the Young Player of the Tournament award for the unbelievable talent he showed throughout the entire tournament. For winning the World Cup, the entire French team were given a $400K bonus, but Kylian stayed humble. He donated his entire check to charity because he didn't forget his poor upbringing and where he came from. But now, here he is, 19 years old, champion of the world, but Kylian Mbappe was only getting started. After the World Cup, Mbappe was no longer considered just the future of football, he was the now. PSG gave him the number 7 jersey, which placed even higher expectations on him, but he was ready for them, as he carried his World Cup form straight into the next season. He was scoring goals for fun, most notably 4 goals in just 13 minutes against Lyon back in October. He was awarded the 2018 Copa Trophy, which is the trophy given to the best young player in the world. But some would even argue he wasn't just the best young player, he was the best player overall. Yet again, PSG blitzed their Champions League group but got knocked out in the round of 16 with an embarrassing loss to Manchester United with a last-minute penalty from Marcus Rashford, sending Mbappe home. But as per usual, PSG turned on the gas in France and picked up another league title with Mbappe's most impressive season yet. 33 league goals, 7 league assists, and a Player of the Year award meant Mbappe was showing that he was the best player in France, even ahead of his teammate Neymar. After yet another electric season for Mbappe, Nike came in and offered him a 10-year contract extension, as they were looking to secure the future face of football, with Ronaldo coming to the end of his career. Mbappe agreed and signed a deal worth an estimated $18 million a year. Now, up until this point in Mbappe's career, it had basically been all up for him going from one high to another, but he was just about to enter the season where he would experience the first of his 3 major footballing heartbreaks. Mbappe started the 1920 season like any other, strong and scoring goals, but was sidelined for a month due to a hamstring injury. Nothing Kylian couldn't shake off, as he'd be back and scoring goals soon. Midway through this season, a pandemic you might have heard of came around and shut down football. PSG were crowned champions early, as the league couldn't be completed, meaning Mbappe would pick up yet another league title and yet another top scorer award. The cup competitions, on the other hand, were postponed and allowed to be finished. Mbappe won both domestic cups, already meaning he'd won a domestic treble, but PSG had found themselves in a position they had never been in before. They were in the Champions League final. This was the first final in the history of PSG, and this was the last trophy Mbappe needed to complete football. This meant everything to him. The problem for Mbappe was that he was suffering with an ankle injury and didn't know if he would make the final. He just about managed to recover in time to make the final, but he wasn't playing at full capacity. This injury was still a problem for him. Mbappe played the full 90 minutes in the final, showing flashes of brilliance, but it was clear he wasn't at full fitness. A couple of opportunities came his way, but nothing hit the net, and he was running out of luck. Kingsley Coman bagged the only goal of the match for Bayern Munich, and that was that. PSG lost. Mbappe lost. This was tough. But like all top players do, Mbappe would bounce back stronger than ever. He was announced as the cover star for FIFA 21, further showing the superstar that Kylian was. Mbappe led the PSG line this season and was not messing about. Consistent goals and consistent assists have now just become a staple for Mbappe, as he seemingly just kept getting better and better. In November, he picked up his 20th Champions League goal, making him the youngest player in history to reach that tally, and just a month later, he scored his 100th goal for PSG. Mbappe is just a record magnet. A Champions League hat-trick against Barcelona would see Mbappe humiliate Messi once again, as he scored 3 spectacular goals to sink the Spanish giants. Mbappe just kept proving to the world that he is in fact a big game player. When the pressure was on, he would always step up until football heartbreak number 2, but we'll get to that soon. This season was different for PSG. They actually had a title race on their hands because Lille weren't messing about. Mbappe picked up another Coupe de France, got knocked out of the Champions League in the semi-finals, and actually missed out on the league this year. I guess after 4 in a row, Mbappe was bound to lose the league sooner or later. Whilst PSG were disappointing this season, Mbappe still performed at the highest level, winning the League Player of the Season award and the Golden Boot. But all Mbappe could think about was the summer ahead. He dreamt of winning France another tournament as they headed into the Euros, but little did he know that this tournament was going to be more like a nightmare. Coming into this tournament, France were the champions of the world, making them the clear favorites to win it. Mbappe was the face of this French team, as he was arguably the best player in the world at the time. France found themselves in the group of death with Germany, Spain, and Hungary, meaning just escaping the group was going to be a difficult task. Entering the first game of the tournament against Germany, Mbappe was a threat the entire game. He had a goal disallowed for offside, but France did enough to win the game in the end. In the next 2 games against Portugal and Hungary, Mbappe was not at his best. 2 draws were enough for France to top the group and advance, but Kylian was off it. He had no goals in the 3 opening games. France were drawn against Switzerland in the next round, which should have been an easy task. The game was a thriller. France led the game 3-1 with 15 minutes remaining, where Switzerland bagged 2 late goals to take the game to extra time. Mbappe just couldn't get into the game, and this ended up going to a penalty shootout. 9 penalties were taken and everyone scored. This went down to the last penalty. Kylian Mbappe was taking this penalty. If he scored, the penalties would continue. If he missed, France would get sent home. This was heartbreaking for Mbappe. He was the reason France were leaving the Euros early. This same summer saw France play in the Nations League final, which isn't a tournament at the same scale of the Euros, but it was a chance for redemption. And redemption is what Kylian got. He scored the winner against Spain and lifted the trophy with France. This was a good way for Kylian to bounce back and take his confidence into the next season, which would end up being a record-breaking season for him. But as the season started off, PSG had a new star in town. Lionel Messi signed for PSG, which would create an interesting dynamic for Kylian. Most people in football thought a front three of Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi would make the greatest attack in football history, but something just didn't click. 3 stars in one team just didn't work. Throughout this season, Mbappe was making headlines week after week, but these headlines weren't only for his football performances. There was a lot of speculation about Mbappe's future at PSG, as he had 1 year left on his contract and was very interested in a move to Real Madrid. He finished the season as both the top scorer and top assister in the French league, being the first player in history to do it. He also picked up the league's Player of the Season award as PSG scooped up another league title. As the season came to an end, PSG made one final offer to Mbappe. They wanted him to stay at all costs, so they gave him an offer that he just couldn't refuse. Kylian Mbappe was handed a contract with an annual salary of $50 million and a signing-on bonus of $300 million. Yes, you heard me, $300 million. Mbappe was also given a level of power in the club where he would be involved in decisions at management level. Kylian signed and became the highest-paid football player in the world. Many football fans thought that all this money was going to get to his head. His performances were surely going to drop, but as usual, Mbappe proved them wrong. He came into the 22-23 season with the same form as he had in the last one. He started the season on fire, scoring goals as he always does, but this season was different from any other football season because, as December rolled around, club football stopped and there was a World Cup to play. Four years on from France's World Cup victory, and Mbappe was looking to make it too. In the first group game against Australia, France came back from a goal down to win 4-1, where Mbappe picked up a goal and an assist. In the second group game against Denmark, Mbappe showed up yet again, bagging both goals in a 2-1 victory. Jumping into the round of 16, France were drawn against Poland, where, yet again, Mbappe stole the show. He played a beautiful assist to Giroud and scored this wonder goal. France were through to the quarterfinals against England, where the English would soon find out that football was in fact not coming home. Kane missed the crucial penalty that would have drawn England level and given them a chance. Man, Kylian really enjoyed that one. Semi-final time and France were taking no prisoners. A clean 2-0 victory against Morocco saw Mbappe reach his second World Cup final just before his 24th birthday. France versus Argentina. Messi versus Mbappe. This is some deja vu. Messi's Argentina drew first blood, and not soon after, Di Maria quickly made it 2-0 for Argentina. Time was running out for France, but with just 12 minutes left on the clock, they managed to win a penalty, and this is where the fun began. Mbappe scores the penalty, and then just 2 minutes later, he scores this volley to level the game. The game went to extra time, where Messi made it 3-2, but Kylian Mbappe was about to do the impossible. One more penalty for France, and Mbappe completed a World Cup final hat-trick. Mbappe had written himself in the history of football as one of the greatest players of all time, but despite this, Mbappe was about to suffer the third and worst heartbreak of his football career. As the game went to penalties, things turned sour. Mbappe scored his penalty, but that wasn't enough. France lost the shootout and lost the World Cup final. Mbappe scored a hat-trick, but somehow didn't walk away with the trophy. He took home the Player of the Tournament award along with the Golden Boot, but these individual awards weren't what he wanted. Mbappe was devastated, but with the nature of the World Cup being in the middle of the season, he didn't have much time to cry about it. He had to get back to Paris.
Personnellement, je vais jamais digérer. Maintenant, comme j'ai dit, mon club il n'est pas responsable de de cet échec en sélection. Donc j'ai essayé de revenir avec l'énergie la plus positive possible.
Back in Paris and reunited with his teammate Lionel Messi, that must have been an awkward conversation in the dressing room. But Mbappe refused to let this heartbreak ruin his season. He continued his world-class form, picking up 5 goals in a single match against Vannes, making him the first PSG player to do that. In March, he was named as France's captain due to his stellar performances and high level of maturity following the retirement of Hugo Lloris. It's also no surprise that PSG picked up another league title, and Mbappe picked up yet another Golden Boot, making that his 4th in a row, along with his 4th Player of the Year award in a row. He finished the season with a total of 41 goals and 10 assists, keeping his performance levels extremely high. Now, as he enters the 23-24 season, nothing seems to be changing. He's scoring goals for fun, and as Messi and Ronaldo are finally at the end of their careers, he looks to take the place as the best player in the world, although a certain treble-winning Norwegian might have something to say about that. Mbappe's time at PSG looks to be soon over, with his contract expiring at the end of this season, and all of Europe's top clubs eyeing up the Frenchman. Maybe Kylian will finally get his dream move to Real Madrid. But what is very clear is that at 25, Mbappe has already written his name in the history of football, and I can guarantee that his story is far from over. But from France to Liverpool, it's time for the Egyptian king, Mohamed Salah. How does a kid born into a poor country that literally canceled football escape that life to somehow play football professionally? But then, how does that kid get rejected from his club being deemed not good enough, only to become the best player in that country just 3 years later? But even more than just that, how does he rise to the top of European football to getting targeted and injured in the final to then come back 1 year later and claim the award as his own? Mohamed Salah has been through rejection after rejection and setback after setback, but yet he's going down as one of the greatest football players of all time. But how did he do it? How did this poor Egyptian kid defeat all the odds and become a football superstar? This is the full story of Mohamed Salah.
Salah, and still Mohamed Salah. Oh, he's done it! How on earth has he managed to squeeze that in? He's still going, and Salah for Liverpool! And the roof comes off the famous old stadium once again.
Mohamed Salah was born on June 15, 1992, to middle-class parents in an Egyptian village north of Cairo called Negreg, where he grew up surrounded by a love for football rather than academics, having been thrown into the sport from a young age and having the likes of Ronaldo Nazario, Francesco Totti, and Zinedine Zidane as his childhood idols. By only the age of 7, his talent already began to shine through as he would play street football with his brother against older and stronger opponents and eventually catch the eye of local football teams. At just 14 years old, Salah's talent on the pitch caught the attention of a scout from Al Mokwaloun, a team in Cairo competing in the Egyptian Premier League, and soon enough, he found himself at a top academy and well on his way to professional football over in Egypt. But the issue for Mohamed was living in Negreg was far from easy, as he had to continuously miss school, having to travel 4 hours a day using several different buses just to make it to training. Thankfully, the risks he took and the hours of work he put in would soon pay off, as at just the age of 15, he started to impress the first-team manager, Mohamed Radwan, who had made the bold decision of moving him to the first-team squad. But at this point, Salah was small, weak, and skinny, which meant despite his talent on the ball, he would struggle to compete physically, so he had to be given a special diet and training program, which, based on his physique to date, surely has paid off. But let's not rush. At age 17, Salah's big moment finally came because on the 3rd of May 2010, he made his first-team debut as a substitute in a 1-1 draw against Al Mansoura, and during the 2010-2011 season, he started earning more and more minutes, eventually becoming a regular in the starting lineup. But despite all the game time, he kept struggling to find the back of the net, and it even frustrated him to the point where he would sometimes sit in the dressing room in tears after matches. But instead of breaking him, it fired him up to keep improving, and with that, his first goal finally came on December 25, 2010, and what a way to announce himself as he burst forward with his lightning pace, leaving defenders chasing shadows, and smashed the ball past the keeper with a low, thunderous strike that slipped right under him. And little did anyone know that this move wasn't just a one-off. It was the start of something special, a glimpse of the signature goal that would become his trademark, the kind of finish fans would come to expect every time he got the ball. Following this match, Salah was locked in as a key player for Al Moghawaloum, appearing in every single game of the 2011-2012 season and proving he was more than ready for any challenge ahead. But right as the future began to shine so bright, Egypt entered one of the worst periods in the country's history, with a revolution erupting, toppling President Hosni Mubarak and plunging the country into political and economic instability, with football caught in the crossfire of this disaster as stadiums became battlegrounds for protests and expression. And soon enough, tragedy struck on February 1st, 2012, when the Port Said Stadium riots broke out during a match between Al Masry and Al Ahly, resulting in the deaths of 74 people and hundreds injured. A tragedy so brutal and unfair, which shocked the nation and led the Egyptian Football Association to cancel the remainder of the season, leaving players like Salah in the dark with no domestic league to compete in and no clear path forward in their careers. But despite this unforeseen and unlucky challenge, Salah remained focused on his main goal of becoming a professional footballer. And, luckily enough, the talent he expressed in the domestic league did not go unnoticed as he was called up to the Olympic national team for Egypt. And this would prove to be the turning point he desperately needed, because the Egyptian national team ended up organizing a friendly against FC Basel, where Salah came on as a sub in the second half and scored 2 goals. And it was this performance that truly impressed Basel's president, who said, "He only played the second half, but I had never seen a player with so much speed in my entire life." This prompted the president to invite Salah to the Swiss city for a week for a trial, from which they ended up signing him during the summer. And just like that, Salah had escaped the turmoil that was Egyptian football and made the first big step in his career. But as you'll soon see, the setbacks and the challenges were far from over. Now guys, this story does get a lot crazier with rejection, heartbreak, but ultimately glory. But before we get into that, I just want to ask a favor. I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe and help me become the biggest football channel on all of YouTube. This is my dream, and your support means the world to me, so thank you. Okay, now back to the story. At 20 years old, Mo Salah signed a 4-year deal at Basel, marking the start to his European adventure, and adapting to a new country and language was not easy for the young Egyptian, so much so that Heiko Vogel, who was Basel's manager at the time, was shocked by the Egyptian superstar's terrible initial performances in training and thought the club had signed a twin brother of his. But he embraced the challenge and stepped into the shoes of Basel's former star Xherdan Shaqiri, who left right when Salah joined. And in his first season, Basel's next manager, Murat Yakin, carefully managed his development, often using him as an impact substitute, where he went on to score 10 goals and provide 11 assists in 50 games, helping Basel win the Swiss Super League, finish runners-up in the Swiss Cup, and reach the Europa League semi-finals, where they were beaten by Chelsea despite Salah scoring in one of the ties. But Mo would not let this slide, as we're about to see. The 2013-14 season saw Salah take things to another level, especially in the Champions League, where he scored the equalizer in Basel's stunning 2-1 win against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and then even scored the winner in the return leg in November. However, after this monumental win for the club, they were eventually eliminated in the group stage. It was no surprise that Salah caught the attention of so many top European clubs, and by January 2014, Chelsea were reminiscing about the Egyptian's performance against them and decided to sign him from the Swiss side for 16.5 million euros, leaving Basel as a Swiss champion with a total of 20 goals and 17 assists in 79 appearances. But despite seeming like the dream transfer move for the player, this would soon turn out to be the worst decision of his entire career, as everything he worked for would start to slip right through his fingers. Mo Salah became the first ever Egyptian to join Chelsea Football Club, and it was his mission to make his country proud and really put Egypt on the footballing map. But unfortunately, he found himself in a team stacked with star wingers like Eden Hazard, Willian, and Oscar, which made it hard for him to break into the starting 11. He eventually made his debut in February in a 3-0 win against Newcastle and scored his first goal on March 22nd in a legendary 6-0 thrashing of Arsenal during Arsene Wenger's 1000th game in charge, coming off the bench to slot in the 6th goal. His next big moment came in April, when he opened the scoring, won a penalty, and provided an assist in Chelsea's 3-0 victory over Stoke City, showing glimpses of the player he was destined to become. But despite these flashes of brilliance, Salah's time at Chelsea was far from smooth, because during the 2014-15 season, rumors spread that Salah might have had to return to Egypt for mandatory military service. But thankfully, after intervention from the Egyptian Prime Minister and national team officials, he was spared. Still though, opportunities on the pitch which were rare as he only made 3 league appearances and was publicly criticized by manager Jose Mourinho after a poor performance in a match. And even though his contributions were minimal, Mourinho promised Salah a replica winner's medal for Chelsea's successful domestic campaign, which was rather insulting and added to the bittersweet nature of his time in London, which soon came to an end after a dramatic deadline day move in February 2015, where Mo Salah joined Fiorentina on an 18-month loan as part of the deal that sent Juan Cuadrado to Chelsea. Unfortunately for Mohamed, his time in England was considered a failure, but this lit a fuel in him, and as you know, he would eventually return to dominate this league. But for now, he was arriving in Italy with a point to prove, and things were only going up from here. Salah chose the number 74 shirt as a tribute to the victims of the Port Said Stadium tragedy, showing that no matter where he played, he carried Egypt in his heart. And just 6 days after signing, he made his debut against Atalanta, coming off the bench in a 3-2 win. And on February 14th, Salah made his first start for Fiorentina against Sassuolo and wasted no time, scoring his first goal for the club in the 30th minute before assisting a second goal just 2 minutes later in a 3-1 victory. And his hot streak continued when he scored his first European goal for Fiorentina 12 days later, sealing a 3-1 aggregate win over Tottenham to send Fiorentina into the Europa League round of 16, and Salah just kept delivering for his new club. But despite his incredible run of form in his debut season, things got complicated towards the end as Fiorentina tried to activate a clause to make his loan permanent, but Salah refused to stay after offering him an insulting contract. So he joined Roma, which would eventually turn out to be one of the club's best ever deals, because in his first season in Rome, Salah hit the ground running, wearing the number 11 shirt and making his debut in August in a 1-1 draw against Verona. And he quickly proved his worth by scoring his first goal a month later against Sassuolo in a 2-2 draw, following it up with more goals in back-to-back matches. And as the season progressed, Salah became Roma's top scorer with 14 goals and also added 6 assists to his locker, helping the team secure a third-place finish in the Serie A and therefore a spot in Champions League qualification. And with that, by the end of the 2015-2016 season, Salah's first impact on the pitch earned him Roma's Player of the Season award and solidified his status as a key player for the club. And of course, Roma wasted no time making his move permanent in the summer of 2016 for just 15 million euros, a bargain for a player who was about to truly explode onto the world of football. The 2016-17 season was a record-breaking campaign for Roma and a personal best for Salah, who delivered 15 goals and 11 assists in the Serie A alone, as he was either scoring or assisting almost every game, averaging 0.95 goal contributions every 90 minutes thanks to his incredible pace, sharp dribbling and crossing ability, making him the perfect partner for Edin Dzeko, as the duo combined for 44 league goals, making them one of the most dangerous attacking forces in Europe. But Salah's time at Roma wasn't just about stats. It was his impact which solidified him into the hearts of the fans, as he was a key part of a team that pushed Juventus all the way in their title race, finishing second in Serie A, just 4 points off the top. But after a season like this, Mo Salah was now back in the eyes of Europe's top clubs and was ready to make his return to the league that almost broke him. After 2 seasons in Rome, bagging a total of 34 goals and 21 assists in 83 appearances, Mohamed Salah was announced as Liverpool's latest signing in a move that would literally change the entire world of football and prove to be one of the best transfers in the entire history of the sport. Now at 25 years old, Mo Salah was signed to provide depth, especially with an injured Sadio Mane and no reliable backup in the 16-17 season. Jurgen Klopp had just signed for Liverpool a couple of years prior and was slowly building a team that could win the lot, and Mo Salah was the latest piece to this evolving puzzle. The signing was completed for a 42 million euro price tag, a fee which the Reds initially laughed at, and looking at it logically, spending 40 million euros on an Egyptian who had previously failed in the Premier League was not an obvious choice, but Klopp saw something in him. Salah was well known for his crossing ability and cutting inside from the wings, on top of his blistering pace of course, all attributes which fit a Jurgen Klopp system perfectly. In Salah's debut season for the Reds, Roberto Firmino graciously handed over the number 11 shirt to him and made his debut on the opening day of the Premier League season against Watford, where he hit the ground running by winning a penalty, and scoring in a thrilling 3-3 draw that had fans buzzing. And his electric start did not stop there, as he tapped in a crucial goal in the Champions League playoff against Hoffenheim, followed by a man-of-the-match performance at Anfield in a stunning 4-0 demolition of Arsenal, where he scored and set up Daniel Sturridge with an inch-perfect cross, earning himself Liverpool's Player of the Month for August. And Mo carried this form into September with 3 more goals, including a brilliant brace and assist in a record-breaking 7-0 Champions League thrashing of Maribor that left fans in awe of the player they signed. By November, Salah had transformed into a goal-scoring machine, and as 2018 kicked off, Salah showed no signs of slowing down, returning from injury to inspire Liverpool to a 4-3 win over previously unbeaten Man City with a stunning 30-yard strike that sealed the victory, followed by a brace against Tottenham, and in March, he reached new heights with his first hat-trick for the Reds, scoring 4 times in a 5-0 demolition of Watford, including a signature solo effort that left defenders in the dust and had Anfield roaring as he made history by winning the Premier League Player of the Month award 3 times in one season, an achievement no one had managed before. He was just turning into a record machine and could not stop scoring. He was performing at a level never seen before and was now being talked about as the best player in the Premier League. In the Champions League, Salah was just as unstoppable, scoring in both legs of the quarterfinal against Man City to send Liverpool to the semi-finals for the first time in 10 years, and against his former club Roma, where he delivered a masterclass in the first leg with 2 world-class goals and 2 assists in a 5-2 victory that took his season tally to 43 goals, 32 of which were in the Premier League alone, making him the all-time goal scorer in a Premier League season, claiming the Golden Boot and cementing his place as the league's most lethal forward just after 1 year. But despite all this individual glory, Liverpool's season ended in heartbreak as they finished 4th in the league. But the real blow came in the Champions League final against Real Madrid, when Salah's incredible run was tragically cut short after just 30 minutes due to a criminal challenge by Sergio Ramos, who pinned him down and dislocated his shoulder, leaving him in agony and tears. This resulted in Liverpool falling to a devastating 3-1 defeat. But this defeat was only fuel, making Salah and Liverpool hungrier to come back the next year. But for now, Salah was named the PFA Players Player of the Year award and earned himself a new 5-year deal as Liverpool's highest paid player. Now, during the summer, Salah went on to represent Egypt in the 2018 World Cup, which they had not participated in since 1990, though the campaign sadly ended in more frustration for him as they lost every group stage match and were sent home early. But unlike what we were about to see with Liverpool, his international heartbreaks were only going to get worse from here. But more on that later. Now we head into the 2018-19 season, and after a debut season like that, most people figured it would be crazy to think that Salah could keep up those insane numbers at Liverpool. And let's be real, it was the kind of season you'd expect once in a lifetime, but oh boy, Salah had other ideas, because not only did he keep proving everyone wrong, he just kept leveling up and turning doubters into believers. Mo wasted no time getting started this season, scoring Liverpool's first goal of the year in a 4-0 win over West Ham, and this magical time at Liverpool was only getting better, as by December he became the first Egyptian ever shortlisted for the Ballon d'Or, and despite finishing 6th, this was still a historic moment that made his country proud, solidifying his status as the greatest Egyptian footballer of all time. And he soon went on to score his 50th goal for Liverpool in just 65 games, making him the fastest player in the club's history to reach that milestone. Now, at this time, Liverpool were sitting top of the Premier League, and they were literally on fire, and the same was happening in the Champions League, as Liverpool had progressed to the round of 16 and were looking to take home the lot. Come April, and Salah scored yet another signature solo run goal to make him the fastest Liverpool player to reach 50 Premier League goals, achieving it in just 69 games and breaking Fernando Torres' record of 72 games. The Premier League title went down to the final game of the season this year, and unfortunately, despite achieving 92 points, Liverpool finished 1 point shy of Man City, leaving heartbreak in the city, who had been deprived of a league title for just about 30 years. Despite the team heartbreak, Mo finished finished as the league's top scorer with 22 goals for the second time in a row, but this time sharing the Golden Boot with Mane and Aubameyang. But the real story this season for Liverpool came in Europe, as these men were back for revenge, as they found themselves in the Champions League final, and they thanked their lucky stars they came against Tottenham Hotspur. Pretty much a free hit considering Spurs' allergy to trophies, but still they had to get the job done, and within the first 20 seconds of the match, Liverpool won a penalty which Salah converted, and the Reds went on to secure a 2-0 victory, claiming their 6th Champions League title, marking Salah's first major honor with the club and putting to rest the heartbreak of the previous year's final. From the moment the 2019-20 season kicked off, Salah and Liverpool dominated the Premier League, finishing yet another season with over 20 league goals, and this time, as the year came to an end, Liverpool sat top of the Premier League, and Mo Salah, a Premier League reject just a few years ago, was now a Premier League champion. But still, Mohamed Salah was not quite ready writing his legacy as he moved into what was now his 4th season at Liverpool Football Club. Showing no signs of slowing down, he scored a hat-trick in the first league match of the season against Leeds, and come October, he scored his 100th goal for Liverpool in all competitions in a draw against Everton. But of course, this was not enough for Mo, as he went on to secure his 20th goal in all competitions for the 4th season in a row. But unfortunately, this time, Liverpool fell short behind both Manchester teams in a 3rd place finish, on top of getting knocked out from the Champions League in the quarterfinals by Real Madrid, who kept haunting Mo Salah. But this was far from the end, as Salah's biggest heartbreak was just around the corner. But he still kicked off his 5th season with a bang by once again scoring and assisting in the first match day in a 3-0 win over Norwich, becoming the first player ever to score in the opening game of 5 consecutive Premier League seasons, and just weeks later, he hit his 100th Premier League goal in a win over Leeds and reached the milestone faster than any Liverpool player before him, achieving it in just 151 games and climbing into the club's top 10 goal scorers of all time. October was a month of magic, as Salah scored a stunning double against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League to become the club's all-time leading scorer in the competition, and just days later, he destroyed Manchester United with a historic hat-trick in a 5-0 win at Old Trafford to become the highest-scoring African player in Premier League history.
Light break here, Naby Keita involved again, and it's 3! Jota, it's a bobbler, and it's 4 for Liverpool. It is absolutely beautiful from Henderson, and it's Mo Salah again.
And this was followed by a solo goal against Manchester City that won both the Goal of the Month and Goal of the Season awards.
Salah doesn't have anything to work with there, but he somehow kept the ball. Incredible feat by Mohamed Salah, and he goes on! Oh my word!
In December, Salah once again hit the 20-goal mark for the season during Liverpool's flawless Champions League group stage campaign, and became the first Liverpool player since Ian Rush to score 20 goals in 5 consecutive seasons. But come February, Salah was called up to the AFCON, and he went in with dreams of bringing the trophy home. But unfortunately, this would not be the case. He captained Egypt in the AFCON final against Senegal, where he clashed with his teammate Sadio Mane, only to lose the trophy in a dramatic penalty shootout.
Against Mendy. Lachine saved! Mane! Mane! Senegal are African champions!
And then, to make matters worse, just a month later in March, Egypt faced Senegal once again in the World Cup qualifiers, with another penalty shootout deciding their fate, and once again, Senegal came out on top, bashing Salah's World Cup hopes, meaning Salah's Egyptian dreams were crushed twice in 2 months. But things just went from bad to worse for Salah, as Liverpool once again fell short in the Premier League, as they lost the league title to Man City by just 1 point, and even lost another Champions League final to none other than Real Madrid. But despite 4 major heartbreaks in a single season, Mo Salah still had some silver linings, as he finished as the joint top scorer in the Premier League with 23 goals, claiming his 3rd Golden Boot, and even winning the Playmaker of the Season award with 13 assists. And Liverpool still celebrated a domestic double by lifting both the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. Salah was now entering season number 6 at Liverpool and had maintained the world-class performances for 5 years in a row, prompting a new contract that would run until 2025, making him the highest-paid player in the club's history with a wage of £350,000 per week. Now at the ripe age of 30, and after such heartbreaks in the previous season, everyone thought that Salah's career would be finished and wouldn't have the mental or physical strength to push through. But Mo was all about making a point and proving doubters wrong, and so, with such a fire lit inside of him, he wasted no time by scoring and assisting in a 3-1 Community Shield win over Man City and kicking off his 6th Premier League season with a goal and assist in a 2-2 draw at Fulham, breaking his own record and becoming the first player to score on the opening day 6 seasons in a row. And in October, apart from placing 5th in the Ballon d'Or, Salah came off the bench to bag a historic 6-minute hat-trick against Rangers in a 7-1 Champions League win to break the record for the fastest hat-trick in the entire competition. But once again, Liverpool's Champions League run ended in the round of 16 against, of course, Real Madrid. But March brought even more records as Salah destroyed Man United in a 7-0 win, scoring twice and assisting twice to become Liverpool's all-time Premier League top scorer with 129 goals, overtaking Robbie Fowler. And, as expected, he finally became the highest-scoring Egyptian in the history of football with 303 career goals, surpassing Hossam Hassan. But all in all, this was another disappointing season for Liverpool, who not only were knocked out of the Champions League early on, but didn't even qualify for it in the upcoming season as they finished 5th in the Premier League. Now, the entire city of Liverpool was about to face a shock as Jurgen Klopp would come out to announce the 23-24 season was going to be his final one for the club, and they were close to getting a double hit as Salah received a massive 2-year offer worth £155 million from Al Ittihad in the Saudi League, but his agent made it clear he was fully committed to Liverpool, and despite the Saudi team returning with a £150 million bid in September, Liverpool stood firm and rejected it, showing the mutual love for between the club and the player. Liverpool placed 3rd in the Premier League this year, and Jurgen Klopp bid farewell to the club, leaving with Mo Salah having been his most used player in his time there. Klopp had really built a dynasty at Liverpool FC, and the world of football doubted whether the new manager Arne Slot was going to be able to keep up the levels in the team. But funnily enough, he was going to not only keep the levels, but step it up, as both Liverpool and Mo Salah were about to dominate England once more. So now moving into the current season, and with only 1 year on his contract, people were doubting his focus, but Mo Salah is just a perfect professional and who has simply aged like fine wine as he has started this year in the best way possible. Even better than his first season at the club, as he became the first player in the Premier League history to reach double digits at both goals and assists before Christmas, while also climbing to 4th on Liverpool's all-time scoring list, surpassing Billy Liddell. Liverpool also finally defeated Real Madrid in the Champions League this season, meaning they've seemingly broken their curse, so now we just wait and see as to what the second half of the season holds for Mo and Liverpool, but it's safe to say that he'll be going down as one of the greatest football players to ever grace the Premier League and will forever be remembered running down the wing as the Egyptian king. What a player! But from one Premier League legend to another, it's time to hear about the player who barely worked hard in training but still destroyed everyone. What if I told you there was a football player who hardly ever trained but still humiliated every defender in England? A player who won the Premier League twice, was named in the Team of the Year 4 times, and in his entire time in England completed the most dribbles in the league, more than double anyone else, and he did all this off the back of pure, raw talent. No tactics and no hard training sessions, but still, whenever he touched the ball, every defender would shiver. And this, of course, is the legendary Eden Hazard. But how did he get there? How did a lazy player who refused to train become one of the greatest of all time? Well, to find out, we have to go back to January 1991 in a small Belgian village where this story begins. Because Eden Hazard was born in Braine-le-Comte, a village 30 kilometers out of Brussels, and not renowned for developing world-class footballers, until of course Sarine and Thierry Hazard stepped into town. The married couple were both ex-footballers. Thierry played as a sweeper in the Challenger Pro League, while Karine was a former Belgium international footballer. And the result of this love? 4 future footballers' sons. But as much as it looks obvious this family would leave their mark on the beautiful game, it was not back then because both parents barely struggled to make a living out of football, so they were not banking on their children achieving anything that much greater. Eden wasn't a Project Mbappe. He wasn't a kid from the favelas of Sao Paulo or the street cages of South London dreaming of a route out of poverty. He just loved playing football, and in the family's picturesque Braine-le-Comte garden, Eden dribbled, juggled, and danced with the ball alongside his brother for hours every night. But the question remains, how does a boy playing football for fun in his back garden end up as the Premier League's most talented footballer? At the age of 4, Eden joined his hometown team, Royal Stade Brannois, who were just an amateur football club and had never played above Belgium's 4th tier. And even at this age, Hazard seemingly didn't need to train, he just got it. One of Eden's youth coaches at Royal Stade Brannois claimed, "He knew everything. I had nothing to teach him, a sentiment which would eventually be shared by tactical masterminds Jose Mourinho, Rafa Benitez, and Antonio Conte. Eventually, the gifted youngster joined AFC Tubize, and this is when things would turn up a notch for the eldest Hazard brother. He'd play in friendly matches against some of the best youth-level Belgian, Dutch, and French clubs, and it wasn't long before Eden had a whole host of suitors until one stood out above the rest, because at age 14, Ligue 1 giants Lille came knocking on his door, and suddenly the possibility of actually becoming a professional player started to look more and more real. When Hazard arrived, the academy's coaches were bamboozled by how a teenager with such natural ability had never represented a professional academy before, and they were now desperate to take him under their wing because it was clear from the offset they'd unearthed a player so talented he could return the French title to Lille for the first time in 50 years, and believe it or not, that is exactly what he would do. But Eden didn't become the French League's best player overnight. He received criticism in his academy days for his dedication, work rate, and unseriousness at times. His teammates would work out in the gym relentlessly, study the game tactically, and analyze every touch of the ball, desperately trying to show the academy coaches that they had the skill and physicality to represent the first team. But Hazard, well, he messed about in training just like he was playing in the garden with his brothers. But still, he outperformed everyone. And then, a couple of years later, now 16, the time finally came where many of Lille's senior team were out representing their nations, so Eden was called into training to make up numbers, but the coaches simply couldn't believe what they were seeing. With his low center of gravity and amazing dribbling skills, Hazard effortlessly dazzled past Lille's established Ligue 1 stars in small-sided matches, and Lille's manager Claude Puel decided he'd seen enough to give the boy an opportunity in the first team. He made his debut against AS Nancy, and he showed a grand total of 0 nerves. He appeared nonchalant, relaxed, and entirely at home on the field, but this was only an 8-minute cameo, so let's not get carried away. The young winger went on to make another 4 appearances that season, but as the 08-09 season rolled around, the world would finally get to hear about the magic of Eden Hazard. During the opening weeks of the season, Hazard was named among Lille's substitutes, but as the French side trailed AJ Auxerre in the closing moments of a Ligue 1 match, the Wonder Kid was brought on, and he picked up the ball midway inside the opposition's half and smashed a stunning 35-yard strike past the goalkeeper to bring his team level out of nowhere. From that moment of genius onwards, Hazard was a prospect all of Europe's elite scouts had their eyes on. His goal against AJ Auxerre had made him Lille's youngest ever goal scorer, and a month later, the 17-year-old became the 5th youngest player to represent Belgium's national team after making his debut against Luxembourg, and success just continued to follow. He scored in 2 of his following 3 Ligue 1 starts and provided another goal and 2 assists in a Coupe de France tie against Giants Lyon, as Lille's new manager started to really believe that Eden could become the player to bring the club back to its former glory. Lille rewarded Hazard with a new contract with the hope the Belgian would continue to rise from strength to strength, but still, Eden was raw. The numbers weren't world-class, but as he returned the next season, he came back as a different animal, providing 23 goal contributions, winning Lille's Player of the Season and Ligue 1's Young Player of the Season. But it wasn't just the goals and assists that had the football world raving. The 5'9" winger had silky feet, moved effortlessly on the ball, and was resilient to the lunging challenges from imposing defenders. In fact, his playing style was so graceful and pleasing on the eye, French and Belgian media started comparing the youngster to Lionel Messi for the first time. But incredibly, this wasn't his best season in France, as the trickster continued to evolve at an almost unprecedented rate over the next 2 campaigns. But this wouldn't come without criticism, because as Eden entered the 10-11 season, he returned for preseason training completely underprepared, and as you know, this isn't the only time this would happen. So, with Hazard looking lethargic and uninterested, Lille failed to register a win in any of their opening 4 matches, and the team remained inconsistent until early November, when something must have switched for the tricky Belgian, because Hazard went crazy. During a 29-game period where Lille only lost twice, Hazard produced 22 goal involvements, form that would propel the French side into an iconic title race. And with 12 games remaining, Lille had somehow got themselves to the top of the table when they faced the league's favorites Marseille away from home. Hazard scored as Lille won 2-1 to establish a 4-point lead between themselves and the French Giants. And this was enough because Hazard's form dragged Lille all the way to a first Ligue 1 title in 50 years as he was recognized with the division's player of the season. Following this, the interest in Eden was growing. Real Madrid, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, and Inter Milan queued up for Ligue 1's best player of the 10-11 season. But Lille, fresh off lifting their first title in over half a century, remained adamant that their homegrown star was not for sale, and Hazard returned for one last season in France, somehow turning it up yet another gear. He provided 36 goal contributions and became only the second footballer to win Ligue 1's Player of the Season award in back-to-back campaigns. But despite the individual brilliance, Lille took a tumble and finished third in the league and underwhelmingly exited the Champions League in the group stages. So with Lille unable to compete at the top, it was clear that Hazard would need a move to one of Europe's elite sides to realize his potential. And luckily, he wasn't short of suitors. Hazard's teammates hosted a leaving party for the departing Belgian winger the night before his final Ligue 1 match against Nancy. The Hauts de France club were certain to finish third in the table, so a couple of drinks on the eve of the final game didn't seem outlandish. But the night escalated. Hazard drank all night and didn't sleep a wink. He arrived at Lille's home stadium noticeably hungover the following day. Most pros would sit on the sidelines in a jittering mess, but Hazard was different. As soon as he crossed the white line, his lack of sleep seemed irrelevant. The Belgian effortlessly scored a hat-trick in his hungover final game, epitomizing that preparation and ultra-professionalism were secondary to his performance. All the top clubs in Europe had done their homework on Hazard. They knew he wasn't the hardest working or the most professional footballer, but it didn't deter their interest. His talent was simply too impressive to ignore. And after a summer of negotiations, Chelsea, who had just won the Champions League, managed to beat off interest from all the other clubs and land the winger for a bargain price of only £32 million, making him one of the best transfers in the club's history. So Eden Hazard arrived in London ready to tear up the Premier League, but even though Chelsea were aware of Hazard's relaxed attitude, his teammates were startled at how laid back he actually was in training. John Obi Mikel told the media he just stood about, walking around. Everyone else is kicking each other, screaming in training matches, and he didn't do any of that. At first, Hazard's new teammates questioned his attitude, but it wasn't long before any doubts they had were shut away, and they were just left mesmerized by the Belgian winger. During the Belgian sensation's opening 3 Premier League matches with Chelsea, he produced 6 goal involvements, which was just a sign of what was to come for the winger. He'd immediately silenced the remarks of his mentality monster teammates, but it wasn't just the dressing room who doubted Hazard. Before his arrival, many in the media questioned whether a player of such dazzling skill and reliance on technical ability would thrive in the Premier League, a division filled with 6-foot-tall powerhouses ready to hackle down clever wingers at any opportunity. Could he do it on a cold, rainy Tuesday night at Stoke City? But once again, Hazard was uninterested in the noise. Midway through his debut 12-13 season, he blocked out the boos and jeers of the hostile Stoke City faithful and scored a 30-yard screamer to earn his team all 3 points at the Bet365 Stadium. And at this moment, the English media finally knew that Hazard wasn't just a kid with obscene talent, he could become the Prem's next great winger. His status as the league's emerging star was recognized in April 2013 when Hazard was nominated for the PFA Young Player of the Year after providing 22 goal contributions in just 33 appearances. But despite performing on an individual level, the holding European champions had a mixed season as they crashed out of the Champions League group stage but still went on to win the Europa League, which is still a success, just not the greatest prizes that Eden was after. But after watching Hazard's glistening debut season at Stamford Bridge, everybody knew Chelsea's future was in safe hands, and the Belgian winger was about to get so much better. By the beginning of the 13-14 season, whispers of a Lionel Messi reincarnation had intensified. Chelsea supporters were not delusional to believe that Hazard could single-handedly make the London club Premier League champions again. He humiliated every defender he faced with nutmegs, step-overs, and clever ball rolls. The winger looked unplayable as he delivered a 21-goal contribution in the Premier League season, this time being recognized with the PFA's Young Player of the Season. He was becoming a fan favorite in London as he reminded the Chelsea faithful of their 90s superstar Gianfranco Zola, and the Belgian represented something about the essence of Chelsea that but vanished slightly during the trophy-filled years under Jose Mourinho and Roman Abramovich. That football wasn't just about domination. It was about style, enjoyment, and attitude, so the fans just adored him. But despite his performances in his first 2 seasons, Chelsea failed to claim the Premier League for their own, and it had now been 4 seasons since the Premier League title came home to Stamford Bridge. But with Jose Mourinho in charge yet again, things were about to change in the 14-15 season. Chelsea were pretty much unstoppable from the moment Mourinho returned to the dugout. Unlike his previous spell, the team weren't reliant on defensive stability, but artistic attacking flair. The London side scored 15 goals in their first 4 Premier League matches, as Hazard combined with Fabregas, Willian, and Diego Costa to form a lethal offensive threat. Hazard couldn't stop producing in big moments. He scored the winner in an away match at Upton Park, which sent his side 8 points clear at the top. A few weeks later, he notched Chelsea's title-sealing goal against Crystal Palace. But the Belgian season wasn't just about big moments, though. Even in games where he didn't find the back of the net, like during Chelsea's 3-0 drubbing of rivals Tottenham, Hazard humiliated defenders with his flair, trickery, and skill. So it came as no surprise when Hazard picked up the PFA Players Player of the Year, a prize that felt like a foregone conclusion since Christmas. But incredibly, the silky Belgian hadn't reached the peak of his powers. Even during periods when Chelsea performed horrifically, like the 15-16 season when numerous senior pros just stopped trying for Jose, Hazard still produced iconic moments. Tottenham, if you can believe it, were chasing a Premier League title and needed a win at Stamford Bridge to keep their hopes alive. Chelsea were desperate not to pass their trophy north of the Thames to White Hart Lane and welcome Spurs with a hostile atmosphere, one their London rivals would usually crumble under. But against all odds, Tottenham went to the second half with a 2-0 advantage and within a serious chance of snatching Chelsea's title until Gus hitting Brandon Hazard, who'd been struggling with injury. As soon as he stepped on the pitch, the game was flipped on its head. Tottenham couldn't live with Hazard's man-of-the-match performance, and after a drama-filled match full of lunging tackles, Hazard produced a moment of brilliance to level the game and end Tottenham's title hopes. But Chelsea and Hazard weren't ready to become a partnership reduced to special moments during troubled times. They had a team capable of winning silverware, a transfer budget fitting of a league champion, and a world-class new manager, Antonio Conte. But after early defeats to Liverpool and Arsenal, some supporters doubted whether Conte could return Chelsea to their early days. But the Italian manager switched to a 3-4-3, moved Hazard away from his favorite left-wing role, and brought him centrally, and Chelsea became unstoppable. In his new tactical role, Hazard produced 9 goal involvements as Chelsea won 13 back-to-back games. By early February, Chelsea were already running away with the title. Arsenal, the team who prompted Hazard's positional switch, came to the bridge in a desperate attempt to keep their slim title hopes alive, but Chelsea's star had other ideas. He scored a sublime solo goal as he dodged various lunging tackles from Arsenal defenders before eloquently slotting the ball into the left corner. This was the moment everybody knew Chelsea and Hazard were back. After the horrors 15-16 season, they were ready to lift the Premier League title again, and eventually Chelsea won the title with 2 games to spare, and Hazard ended the season with 16 goals and 5 assists. But as was becoming Chelsea tradition by this point, they couldn't stay on top of the Premier League for 2 seasons in a row, meaning the following season they struggled to maintain their title-winning form. The Blues stuttered in the league and finished outside the Champions League places, but it would have been even worse without Hazard. Despite Chelsea's poor form, he made 16 goal contributions in the Premier League and was named to the PFA Team of the Season for a 4th time. But even when Chelsea are struggling, they're never far from silverware. After a favorable FA Cup run, the London club had a chance to redeem their underwhelming season, a cup final at Wembley against Manchester United. And during the early minutes, he came close after a teasing run along the left flank, and soon after, the winger broke away again after an intricate first touch that got him in behind United's defense. Phil Jones looked like he'd never seen a player of such quality as he desperately tried to catch Hazard up before tumbling him down in the box to secure a penalty to Chelsea. Naturally, Hazard scored the spot kick. Chelsea won 1-0, and the Blues secured an iconic 8th FA Cup trophy. But after such a great victory, the Blues would start to worry whether they could really hold on to their star man much longer, especially without Champions League football, because only a few weeks later, a certain Cristiano Ronaldo announced his departure from Real Madrid, and Hazard was the only footballer in the world who appeared capable of replicating his brilliance. So, a move to Los Blancos appeared on the cards. While Hazard was tempted to showcase his brilliance on the world's brightest stage, he enjoyed his private life in London and, despite interest, he didn't push for a move to Real Madrid yet because he was about to produce his best seasons ever. As he entered the 18-19 season, he scored sublime solo goals against Liverpool and West Ham United, further reinforcing his claim as one of the Premier League's greatest ever players, and he looked to be at the absolute peak of his powers under Maurizio Sarri, whose technical style emphasized Hazard's quality on the ball. After a miraculous season, the Belgian had already produced 34 goal contributions. Chelsea faced Arsenal in a Europa League final, which many believe could be Hazard's last in blue and white. As ever, the Belgian was out of this world. He scored twice and assisted another as Chelsea defeated their London rivals 4-1, preventing the Gunners from winning their first European trophy and adding another to Chelsea's collection. After the game, Hazard was questioned about his future. The Belgian responded with sadness audible in his voice. "I think it's a goodbye, but in football, you never know. My dream was to play in the Premier League, and I did this for 7 years in one of the biggest clubs, so now maybe it's time for a new challenge." And just like that, it was over. The 21-year-old who arrived at Stamford Bridge with promises of dominating the Premier League for the next decade had fulfilled his potential with 2 league titles, an FA Cup, League Cup, and a farewell Europa League triumph. A few days later, Eden's £90 million transfer to Real Madrid was announced. It seemed like the prophecy that Hazard would eventually dethrone Messi as La Liga and Europe's top player was about to come true, but the relaxed winger never replicated his former glory. All the things that made him great at Chelsea, the privacy, the freedom to train sporadically, and the unrelenting love from the supporters, staff, and players were immediately lost in the overwhelming glare of Madrid and the Spanish press. The La Liga giants would have signed the sensation earlier if it weren't for concerns about his marketability. With less interest in social media, fame, and attention than the typical Madridista, Hazard was instantly forced to adopt a personality that wasn't his. Still, he arrived for preseason overweight. At Chelsea, everybody might have forgiven his indulgence and laughed. That's just Hazard. They knew he'd deliver the goods regardless. But at Madrid, a club desperate to reclaim the Champions League, it was as if he'd committed an act of terror against its heritage. In 4 campaigns, Hazard only racked up 76 appearances and was dismissed as one of Real Madrid's greatest flops of the modern era. In the end, Hazard was never supposed to dethrone Messi. Sure, he could win Ballon d'Ors, Champions Leagues, and World Cups, but the cheerful little boy from Braun-le-Comte never dreamt of unprecedented success. He just wanted to play football with a smile on his face and enjoy the company of his peers. The winger who refused to train scored 110 goals, provided 89 assists, and produced countless unforgettable moments in Chelsea's blue and white. Hazard will always be remembered as one of the most talented players to grace the Premier League. And now for perhaps the only football player with more natural ability than Hazard, one of the greatest football players of this generation, Neymar Jr. Neymar is one of the greatest football players of all time. At 19 years old, he was the golden boy of Brazilian football. At 22 years old, he was arguably the greatest dribbler on the planet. And at 25, he became the most expensive player of all time, as he was quite literally unplayable. But as incredible as his rise to the top of football was, there was always one thing missing. He was always just one step away from becoming the best football player in the world. But injuries, bad behavior, and poor career decisions all kept him from reaching that goal. Neymar! But the questions remain. Did Neymar really live up to his potential? How good were his prime years of football? And most importantly, how on earth did this poor Brazilian boy become one of the greatest football players on the planet? This is the full story of Neymar. Just like all Brazilian legends, Neymar grew up in a humble household in Sao Paulo, but even from the age of 4, it was clear he was a footballing prodigy. His dad was a former pro footballer himself and knew talent when he saw it, so he mentored his son, who would spend hours practicing his skills with incredible dedication and passion so that his natural ability didn't go to waste. When he wasn't practicing or playing street football with his mates, Neymar would watch videos of his idol Ronaldinho and try to copy his silky skills. By age 11, he joined Santos, one of the top clubs in Brazil, and it's there that he would face a relentless schedule that pushed him further and further, so that by the age of 14, he was so good he was even invited to Spain to try out for none other than Real Madrid. At this point, he and his father were faced with a huge choice: to stay in Brazil or fly across the world to Spain. And unlike what many young footballers would choose, Neymar stayed in Brazil with his dad, saying cultural values were the most important thing for his humble family. But as you know, this was not the last time Neymar would get interest from the big European teams, but all that was yet to come, because for now, he was just starting to make enough money playing in Brazil to contribute to his family. And so at 15 years old, they were finally able to buy a house, doing so right outside of the Santos Stadium to give Neymar even better chances of success. By the age of 17, Neymar made his debut for Santos, and it only took him a week before he scored his first goal for the club. He went on to score 14 league goals in that first season, but it was his dazzling dribbling and creativity that really got the fans off their seats and even got sponsors to take note. This is when Nike swooped in, giving Neymar an 11-year contract as, day by day, the world was starting to take note of this young Brazilian boy tearing up football in Brazil. And that was only going to get crazier the next year, because in 2010, Neymar scored an incredible 42 goals in 60 appearances for Santos, leading 14,000 fans to sign a petition that Neymar should be included in the Brazil World Cup squad. But believe it or not, head coach Dunga said he didn't have enough international experience to go to the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, where Brazil would lose out in the quarterfinals. But Neymar wouldn't be too worried, because it wasn't long before Brazil got a new head coach and he would finally make his national team debut. And what a surprise, the 18-year-old scored after just 28 minutes of his debut, making that the first of many goals for the national team. Clubs were also really taking notice now, with Chelsea bidding $20 million for him and West Ham United also trying to get in the race. Neymar rejected these bids, saying he's only focused on Santos, but it was his agent who was pushing for a move, saying he wants to be the best player in the world. The chances of him doing that while playing in Brazil are 0, which, to be fair, is slightly better odds than the chances of it happening at West Ham. But anyway, Neymar's importance for Santos was growing so much that it even came to the point that when he had an argument with the head coach over who gets to take a penalty kick, the club decided to sack the coach, and that decision would prove to be the right one, because Neymar was about to lead Santos to glory as he scored 6 goals in the 2011 Copa Libertadores, including key goals in the semifinals and the final, where he won the Man of the Match award as Santos won South America's top football trophy for the first time since the days of Pele in 1963. Meaning all of South America was singing the praise of Neymar Jr. Now, the thing about this period of time is we were seeing the rise of social media, and specifically YouTube clips, meaning that for pretty much the first time in football history, players like Neymar in the Brazilian League were being seen by football fans across the globe, going viral for skill after skill and dribble after dribble. But it was one specific goal which would really announce himself to the world with an incredible solo run against Flamengo, which won the 2011 Puskás Award for the best goal of that year.
Neymar, facilidade do Neymar, vai levitando o jogador do Santos. Aí o Neymar protegeu, fez o drible, que lance do Neymar, que golaço!
He was also named the 2011 South American Footballer of the Year and came 10th in the Ballon d'Or rankings, despite still playing in Brazil. Come the next season, and Neymar would go back-to-back, winning the South American Footballer of the Year again, but now the pressure to move to Europe was mounting. Neymar had the potential to be the best football player in the world, and that destiny was never going to be fulfilled in Brazil. So, in May 2013, Neymar made the move across the Atlantic to sign for one of the biggest football clubs in the entire world, Barcelona. But before arriving in Spain, Neymar had international duty over the summer as Brazil played in the Confederations Cup, and Neymar showed up. He scored 4 goals, being named the player of the tournament as Brazil beat Spain 3-0 to win his first major trophy for the national team. He was the golden boy of the national team, and it looked like he was set to lead them to glory for the next decade. But as we all know, that's not quite what happened, with bad luck and bad habits getting in the way of it all. But more on that later. As it stood, Neymar Jr. was the latest Barcelona signing. He was the golden boy in Brazil 1 year out of the World Cup, which they were hosting, and he had just placed 5th in the Ballon d'Or. And believe it or not, the story of Neymar was still only getting started. It took 92 million euros to bring Neymar to Barcelona, making him one of the most expensive players in the world for the first time in his career. Real Madrid were also trying to get their hands on him that summer for the second time and had even been willing to pay more. On the pitch, Neymar started the season by winning the Supercopa de España, scoring the only Barcelona goal of the two-leg match against Atletico. But overall, he failed to live up to the hype and said that for the first season, he felt like he was playing with butterflies in his stomach. He was playing with the likes of Messi, Iniesta, Puyol. Can you really blame him? But still, he still scored 15 goals in what was a rare trophyless season for Barcelona, apart from that Supercopa. But despite the disappointing season by their standards, they were silently building what would be the deadliest attack in football history, and Neymar was ready to grow into a central figure in that team. But before we head into the famous treble-winning season, Neymar headed off to the World Cup, hosted in Brazil, with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was Brazil's talisman, their star player, and boy did he show it, scoring 4 goals in the group stage as Brazil cruised into the knockouts. They beat Chile on penalties in the round of 16, making it to the quarterfinals, which is when disaster struck for the entire nation. Neymar went to challenge for the ball, but was kneed in the back and fractured his vertebrae, meaning just like that, he left the pitch on a stretcher and his World Cup run was over. Brazil lost their star boy, and things just weren't the same after that. They still got through to the semifinals, but in possibly the most humiliating day in Brazilian football history, they crashed out after a 7-1 demolition job by Germany. Neymar was the diamond in the team, and without him, they lost their soul. This injury was one of the first in Neymar's career, but it was a sign of what was yet to come, as time and time again, it would be recurring injuries that just kept him one step away from becoming the best player in the world. But for now, he headed back to Spain and was ready back in action for the start of the next season. And with Luis Enrique at the helm of Barcelona, they were about to take it to a whole new level. Now, I have a question for you. What do you think happens when you put the most skillful player in the world, the deadliest striker in the world, and the best player in the world all in the same front three? Well, you get MSN, and the 2014-15 season was about to unfold. Neymar started with a bang, scoring 3 goals in his first 100 minutes of football, and despite having just recovered from an ankle sprain, he scored 11 goals in his first 11 league appearances. In the Copa del Rey, he was flying also because Neymar scored twice in the quarters, twice in the semis, and once in the final as Barcelona won the cup, showing the most insane skills and dribbles along the way. Looking over at La Liga, Neymar bagged 22 goals as Barcelona edged Real Madrid out to the title by 2 points, making that a domestic double for the season. But it was the Champions League where Neymar really showed his worth, scoring 10 goals overall, making that the joint most for season, including 3 in the quarterfinals, 3 in the semifinals, and 1 in the final against Juventus as Barcelona completed the treble, and Neymar edged his name into football history as one of the focal points of the deadliest attack in the history of football. Neymar finished the season with 39 goals, and MSN together scored an insane 122 goals. But while Neymar won everything possible for his club that season, he did not win many individual plaudits, and that was due to the M in MSN. While Neymar came third in the Ballon d'Or, his best rank so far, he couldn't surpass Messi, who won the award for a 5th time. And whilst this may not have been a big problem yet, Neymar was starting to feel the shadow he was in and started to wonder whether playing in Barcelona he would ever be able to escape it and really fulfill his potential to become the best player in the world. I mean, all the talk at the time was how Neymar was the prince to take over from Messi and Ronaldo, so surely this was playing on the Brazilian's mind. But in football, you never know what is around the corner, and just 6 games into the next La Liga season, Messi suffered a knee injury that would keep him out of action for 2 months and give Neymar a chance to really step up. And boy did he shine, as Neymar hit the form of his life, even scoring 4 goals in a single game against Rayo Vallecano and managing to score 13 goals and get 9 assists in just 8 games, leading pundits to say he was the best player in the world at this time, and some of his goals were just insane, like this one against Villarreal where he flicked the ball over his shoulder and volleyed it in. And these weren't just goals against the small teams, because he was also instrumental in a 4-0 win over Real Madrid, scoring and doing a backheel assist for Andres Iniesta.
Iniesta. Nice layoff, Iniesta! Magnificent finish!
But of course, Messi did come back, and Neymar was once again in his shadow as Barcelona won La Liga and the Copa del Rey for a domestic double, whilst Real Madrid won the Champions League, meaning Cristiano Ronaldo picked up the Ballon d'Or for that year as Neymar, yet again, dreamt of being named the best in the world. That summer, Neymar didn't get any rest as Brazil were hosting the Olympics, and the goal was simple: bring Olympic glory to his country, because whilst this was not a World Cup, it was still a trophy worth winning. He scored in the quarterfinal against Colombia and bagged a brace against Honduras in the semis before scoring his fourth of the tournament in the final against Germany, which finished 1-1 and went to penalties. Neymar stepped up to take the fifth and final spot kick for Brazil and scored to win Brazil an Olympic gold medal, which would prove to be the biggest international success of his career. But the Olympics took their toll on Neymar, who missed the start of the 2016-17 season and only managed 14 league goals in total as Barcelona finished second in La Liga. In the Champions League, though, we probably witnessed the greatest comeback in the history of the tournament, spearheaded by none other than Neymar himself, as Barcelona overturned a 4-0 loss in the first leg of the quarterfinals against PSG by coming back to win 6-1 in the second, where Neymar scored 2 late goals and assisted to save the day for his club. But still, the club slumped out of the tournament in the quarterfinals, only winning the Copa del Rey. Now, Neymar is 25 years old, ready to enter the prime years of a football player, and he was really starting to believe he would never escape the shadow of Messi whilst he remained in Barcelona. Suarez and Messi pleaded for him to stay, telling him he will win a Ballon d'Or whilst playing there, but there were other opportunities calling out for Neymar, specifically one over in Paris, as PSG wanted to take their spending to the next level and finally go on to win the Champions League, meaning they prepared a world record €222 million bid to bring the superstar winger over to France, and just like that, MSN lost Neymar, and he was hoping finally he was going to take his rightful place as the best football player in the world. But unfortunately, that wouldn't be so straightforward. Now, obviously, with a transfer fee like that, Neymar was about to receive the paycheck of a lifetime, or so he thought, as his contract at PSG would make him the second highest paid footballer in the world. But while everyone believed the move was to get out from under Messi's shadow and prove how good he was, Neymar's father denied that the move was to improve Neymar's Ballon d'Or chances, and Neymar also said it was partly because many of his Brazilian teammates were at PSG at the time. But the move elevated PSG to a new level and gave Neymar the chance to become a legend at the club if he could deliver a Champions League title. And Neymar started at PSG on fire, scoring on his debut, and said, "People think leaving Barcelona is to die, but I'm more alive than ever." And he had become part of a new deadly trio, not MSN, but CNM, Cavani, Neymar, and Mbappe. And Neymar's hot form put him back in the Ballon d'Or race, finishing in third again, behind, of course, Messi and Ronaldo. And in January, he again bagged 4 goals in a single game against Dijon, including this awesome solo dribble. By the end of February, he had amassed 28 goals and 16 assists in 30 games. But then disaster struck, because just as he was proving that he could shine without Messi, Neymar fractured his metatarsal, ending his season early in what would be one of the many injuries that would come at the worst time. Luckily, he recovered in time to play for Brazil at the 2018 World Cup, where he scored twice and got 2 assists as Brazil once again fell short, this time to Belgium in the quarterfinals. But Neymar's involvement in the World Cup was remembered not for his playing ability, but instead for his rolling around on the floor against Serbia, which was so bad that it became a viral meme, to the point that an actual English newspaper calculated he spent 14 minutes of the tournament clutching his ankle. But all those theatrics were due to the huge number of fouls and injuries he has suffered throughout his career. You see, there was 2 ways to look at it. A dribbler of his quality got so many knocks and hits throughout the last decade that surely he was more vulnerable. But also, he was a bit of a baby. But anyway, by his own high standards, the next season was a disaster, because although he scored almost 1 goal a game up until Christmas and became the top scoring Brazilian ever in the Champions League, another metatarsal fracture stopped Neymar from performing at the business end of the season, and without him, PSG were once again eliminated early from the Champions League. And off the pitch, Neymar got involved in controversy after controversy, including appearing to punch a fan in the face after defeat in the Coupe de France final and skipping the end of season awards to party with Rihanna. Okay, we can excuse this last one, but the lack of game time coupled with the off-the-pitch controversies meant he was not even nominated for the Ballon d'Or. And to cap off a nightmare season, Neymar couldn't even impress for Brazil, as an ankle ligament injury ruled him out of the Copa America, meaning that the one time Brazil won the tournament during his career, Neymar had to watch it on TV. And all this led to Neymar feeling that France didn't appreciate him and even had a vendetta against him. leading to reports he would leave PSG and return to Barcelona, or perhaps even join Real Madrid. And to make matters even worse, Neymar left Barcelona to escape Messi's shadow, but with the amount of injuries he was getting, he was somewhat falling into the shadow of Kylian Mbappe, his new teammate, meaning life was just not going his way. But instead of leaving, he chose to stay at PSG and had his biggest season yet. Fitness issues and a Champions League suspension meant it was a late start for Neymar, who didn't play until PSG's 5th league game, and he also missed several games with a hamstring injury and bruised ribs. But in the 15 league matches he did play before the Ligue 1 season was cut short due to COVID, Neymar scored 13 and got 6 assists as PSG won the league, the cup, and the League Cup to do the domestic treble. But the 2019-20 season was all about the Champions League, and when Neymar could finally play, he helped PSG get past Borussia Dortmund with 2 vital goals in the round of 16 and grabbed an assist to push PSG past Atalanta in the quarterfinals. PSG then beat Leipzig 3-0 in the semis to set up a final against Bayern Munich. But unfortunately, PSG lost that match 1-0, and while it was the furthest Paris Saint-Germain had got in the competition so far in their history, the defeat left Neymar distraught, as he had come so close just to miss out on bringing greatness to Paris. And pundits agreed, with many saying he was the top player of the season, but typically, the Ballon d'Or was cancelled due to COVID, so there's no knowing whether Neymar could have beaten his previous third-place finishes. The following season saw Neymar pick up so many injuries and suspensions that it took him until May before he could play more than 3 league games in a row. First, he had COVID, then got a red card, then had adductor pain, then ankle problems. But despite this, he still managed a goal every 2 games and got 2 big assists against Bayern Munich to push PSG to the Champions League semi-finals. He still tried his tricks and flicks and even got booked in a game against Montpellier for trying a rainbow flick over an opponent, but all of Neymar's absences cost Paris Saint-Germain dearly as they missed out on the Ligue 1 title, finishing 2nd behind Lille. And if Neymar had moved to PSG to be the main man, then that summer he was in for a shock as PSG signed his former teammate/rival Lionel Messi, making Neymar the peanut in PSG's M&M attack with Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe. And by this time, Kylian Mbappe had become such a superstar in Paris that Neymar was not even the second in the trio, but the third. And he, of course, started the season with fitness issues and only scored once in the first 12 games of the season, and then an ankle injury would keep him out for all of the winter. So, after such a disappointing season, there were once again rumors of Neymar's departure. But the thing was that when Neymar is fit, he can still be a world beater, and he showed that at the start of the 22-23 season when he scored 7 goals and got 6 assists in the first 5 games, and was even praised by the head coach Christophe Galtier for playing the best form of his time at PSG, and that form came just in time for the 2022 World Cup. But unfortunately for Neymar, Brazil's opening match was against Serbia, who fouled him 9 times throughout the game, and one heavy tackle led to Neymar damaging his ankle ligaments, meaning he missed the rest of the group stage. He returned and scored in the round of 16 against South Korea and got Brazil's only goal in the draw against Croatia in the quarterfinals, but Brazil would lose on penalties, and Neymar would once again miss out on a major international trophy. And not long after that, an ankle injury against Lille would mean Neymar would miss the rest of the season too, as he just went from one disaster to another. That would be the last time he would play for PSG, who had a complete squad overhaul, even getting rid of Messi. And while there were glimpses of his genius at PSG, injuries meant Neymar only managed to play more than 30 games a season during his time in Paris, and Neymar even said, "I was in a position to win the Ballon d'Or, but injuries made it difficult." But while he was linked with a return to Barcelona, Neymar's high wage demands and injury record weighed heavily on any club looking to sign him. So when a huge offer came in from Saudi Arabia, Neymar took it. And at that point, Saudi Arabia had attracted some of the biggest stars, from Cristiano Ronaldo to Karim Benzema, but the biggest club in Saudi Arabia, Al Hilal, needed a statement signing of their own. And they targeted Neymar, offering him $150 million a year to be the jewel in their crown. This was a statement by Neymar, almost a step down from the top of football, an admission he was no longer looking to be the best in the world as he chased the money over glory, and the story just gets sadder from here. Neymar arrived in Saudi Arabia with a slight injury, and it took him until September before he played his first match, getting 2 assists in 26 minutes. And around that time, he would play 4 games for Brazil, including a 5-1 win over Bolivia, where he would score his 78th and 79th goals for his country, making him Brazil's all-time top goal scorer, ahead of even the legendary Pelé. And he would also get his 58th assist, which is the joint most of any footballer in international football. But in a match against Uruguay, he would go from these heights to the lowest point possible as he tore his ACL, and this injury would rule him out for the rest of the season, as once again, bad luck and injuries prevented Neymar from shining, as he had only played 5 games for Al Hilal at that point, and while he did play a few minutes in 2 games the following season in the Asian Champions League, his time in Saudi Arabia came to an abrupt end when the head coach Jorge Jesus saying Neymar can no longer perform at the level we're used to, and his huge cost for the club of almost 400 million euros for around 420 minutes of football meant Al Hilal paid Neymar almost €1 million per minute of football, causing many to label the move as the worst signing in the history of football. So, after this mess, Neymar decided to return to a club where he was loved and where he made a name for himself. He returned to Santos, and despite more injuries, Neymar seems to have found some of his form back at his hometown club, but still nothing compared to the beautiful football we saw his first time at Santos. Now 33 years old, it looks pretty clear that Neymar's career at the top of the game is over. And despite many labeling him as the prince who never became the king, I prefer to remember him as one of the most skillful players football has ever seen, and a player who inspired millions to play football the right way. What a legend! But now from a winger on the decline to a winger well and truly on the rise, it's time for the story of the teenage sensation, Lamine Yamal. How is it possible that at just 17 years old, Lamine Yamal is the best football player in the world? At the same age, both Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo were barely playing first-team football, yet Yamal has already won the Euros, La Liga, and made over 100 first-team appearances for club and country. But how did this even happen? How is a 17-year-old skinny teenager being labeled as the best football player in the world? This is the full story of Lamine Yamal.
Lamine Yamal. Lamine Yamal. And Lamine Yamal into the roof of the net. Yamal. Got a bend on it. That is simply amazing. The youngest player.
Do you believe in fate? Because if you don't, try explaining this, because the story of Yamal begins with this image of Lionel Messi literally baptizing a young Yamal as a baby. The plot is almost too good to be true, but Messi washed Yamal as part of a UNICEF commercial in 2007, as Messi, an introvert by nature, awkwardly bathed and cradled Yamal, a baby too young to babble the words of Barcelona's famous El Cant del Barça anthem. The Argentine legend was unaware he was in the presence of the boy who'd one day inherit his throne as Barcelona's best player. But despite Messi's blessing, Yamal's upbringing was far from perfect. The boy's family moved to Matara, a small Catalonian town 30 kilometers northeast of Barcelona, and despite beautiful beachside surroundings, Yamal's early experiences were defined by instability, poverty, and adversity. Yamal's father was a Moroccan-born builder and ex-football hopeful, and his mother was a hard-working waitress from Equatorial Guinea, and they both struggled to make ends meet during his childhood, not to mention the fact that they were young parents, having had Lamine whilst they were still just teenagers. Still, the hard-working married couple dreamed of providing their son with a better quality of life than they received during their troubled childhoods. But without an academic or skilled background, breaking the cycle of financial difficulty appeared challenging. Yamal's father had an impressive amateur football career and noticed his son's potential with the ball from an early age. There was something innate, natural, and effortless about the way Yamal controlled the ball during kickabout sessions on the Mataro beaches. Perhaps it was a result of Messi's blessing. But while the future Barcelona star's parents were ambitious about his future, it became clear that Yamal's route out of poverty wouldn't be forged in a classroom, but would be discovered with the freedom of a ball at his feet. He joined local club CF La Torreta as a 4-year-old, where he played with the same flair, joy, and expression as he gracefully displays in Europe's biggest matches today. While many of Yamal's childhood teammates glanced at their parents for reassurance after the anxiety of making a mistake, the future Golden Boy winner remained calm and unfazed by the noise around him. He dazzled past defenders with a combination of natural football intelligence, athleticism, and skill, scoring dozens of goals in his 3 seasons at the amateur Catalonian club, and it wouldn't be long before the young football prodigy's nonchalance would be tested. Before he turned 7, the age other wonder kids like Jude Bellingham first started experimenting with football, Yamal already had several elite Spanish academy admirers. The 7-year-old reportedly attracted interest from Real Madrid, Espanyol, and Valencia, among various Spanish clubs on its sun-drenched East Coast, and there was only one destination considered by Yamal, and luckily, his wishes would finally start to come true. But interestingly enough, Yamal's father was a Real Madrid supporter, so he was heavily pushing the boy to sign for the Los Blancos Academy. But despite his efforts, young Lamine idolized Ronaldinho, Neymar, and of course, Lionel Messi. So in the hopes that he could one day follow in the footsteps of his idols, he joined the famous Barcelona Academy, La Masia, and it's safe to say he tore it up. During Yamal's under-7s to under-9s campaigns at La Masia, he was head and shoulders above his teammates, and Yamal did not stop progressing. His coach, Albert Puig, told ESPN, "What surprised me most with him is not that he was already a lot better than the rest of his teammates in both age groups, but that as time passed, rather than things balancing out, which usually happens, Lamine stood out even more." Meanwhile, Barcelona's official club website states, at La Masia, he raced through the age categories quicker than any other player of his generation. In contrast to many childhood superstar talents who lost their heads after experiencing success at a young age, Yamal remained humble. He'd continue playing football on the streets, parks, and beaches of Mataró with his hometown friends, without mentioning he was secretly lighting up La Masia and attracting scouts across Europe on the side. But Yamal's hidden glory soon would be exposed, because after scoring 56 goals in 30 appearances while playing a couple of age groups up, La Masia Chiefs were almost certain the winger had the potential to become the next legend to graduate from the famous academy. So Barcelona offered Yamal the chance to live at La Masia residency so their coaches could pay close attention to the wonder kid's sleep, workload, and lifestyle choices. And as the winger continued to develop, the world would soon start to take notice. During a La Liga Promises Santander tournament where Barca faced Liverpool, Juventus, and Dortmund, among a host of elite Spanish clubs, Yamal obliterated the competition. The youngster scored 7 times, featured in a 6-1 demolition of Real Madrid, which was the first of many times he'd humiliate his El Clasico rivals, and he also won the player of the tournament as Barcelona lifted the trophy. It was after this tournament that the national team finally started to take notice, and Yamal was invited to train with the under-15 and 16 teams. And despite the superior physical presence of older youth international defenders, Yamal continued to pull off the unthinkable with natural ease. Come 2023, after impressing in the Spanish youth setup, Yamal featured in the under-17 European Championships as a skinny, underdeveloped 15-year-old, but despite the age gap, it looked as easy as playing on the concrete streets of Mataró. The Catalonian scored 4 times, and some of the game's biggest names were taking note. Florentino Perez was aware of Yamal's father's lifelong love for Real Madrid and invited him to the Bernabeu VIP lounges to convince the 15-year-old to switch alliances and join Los Blancos. But despite the flattering interest, Yamal had little interest in switching to his El Clasico rivals, because during the 22-23 campaign, the teenager's form was so good, it was difficult for the first-team manager Xavi to resist fast-tracking Yamal into the first team. And who could blame him? He was so good in the youth setup that he'd roulette and elastico past defenders, and unlike other youngsters who try the extraordinary, Yamal had a deadly final product too. So after seeing him impress in the youth team for so long, Xavi decided to give the young star a chance in the first team, and this is where Yamal's career would finally start to take off, and things are about to get really, and I mean really crazy from here. Now, if you're enjoying the story so far, subscribe. And if you're not, well, I promise that's about to change, because in September 2022, a 15-year-old Lamine Yamal was thrown into training with the Barcelona squad, and the young Catalonian wizard would not disappoint, because Yamal danced past Jordi Alba, Gerard Piqué, and Sergio Busquets in Barcelona training sessions, to the point that people within the club really started to question whether they had the next Lionel Messi on their hands. But still, he was just a boy, and both Xavi and Barcelona knew they had to nurture their upcoming superstar a little while longer before they unveiled him to the world. On April 23, 2023, Xavi named Yamal as a sub in a La Liga match against Atletico, but the teenager didn't make it onto the pitch as Barcelona clinched a tight 1-0 victory. But just a week later, he was named in the squad again, this time against Real Betis. And after 83 minutes, with Barcelona cruising to a 4-0 victory, Xavi decided it was time to release the teenage prodigy onto the world stage. So Yamal, aged 15 years and 290 days, replaced Gavi to become the youngest player player to represent the Blaugrana in a league match. And during Yamal's short cameo against Betis, the 15-year-old showed glimpses of his golden potential as he almost provided an intricate assist for Dembele, but the game fizzled out without any changes to the scoreline. Now, usually, Barcelona would manage a youngster like this over a number of years, but the club were in financial turmoil as Barcelona were quite simply broke. They were forced to sell Ousmane Dembele, the club's first-choice winger, and Ansu Fati, another youngster previously tipped to become the next Messi, wasn't progressing the way many had hoped. So, as they were unable to spend big in the transfer market, Barcelona could no longer ignore the teenage sensation tearing apart seasoned defenders in preseason and decided he was going to be fast-tracked into the starting 11. So, incredibly, Yamal started the 23-24 season among Barcelona's first-choice wingers. 3 games into the La Liga campaign, having already featured in the previous 2 fixtures, Yamal confirmed his star boy status after winning man of the match and providing an assist in a 4-3 victory over Villarreal. Xavi at Barcelona might have been reluctant to throw Yamal into the deep end too promptly, but it was clear the boy could swim. Having featured in all of Barcelona's opening 11 La Liga fixtures, Yamal became the youngest player to feature in an El Clasico match in November, and the following month, sports journalists across the world had seen enough for the Catalan to become the youngest player to be nominated for the prestigious Golden Boy Award. Yamal's flair, creativity, and skill had been evident throughout the season, but he only had 1 goal to his name by the turn of the year. But that's when the youngster decided to take his game up a notch. He became the youngest player to score in the Copa del Rey and Supercopa in back-to-back months and made the right-wing position his own as he became one of the first names on Barcelona's team sheet. During a 2-game period in February 2024, the 16-year-old produced 4 goal involvements in La Liga, and suddenly the world's media were not viewing Yamal as a teenager with sky-high potential, but as a player already skilled enough to dominate games at the highest level. In April 2024, Yamal's hype grew to another level after becoming the youngest player to register 10 goal involvements in a La Liga campaign. And during Yamal's first season for Barcelona, the teenager broke records weekly, consistently showing he belonged at the top level. But if he still had any doubters questioning his ability, what was going to happen over that summer was something that football had never seen before, as this 16-year-old was going to make history for his country and announce himself as no longer just a wonder kid, but as one of the best players in the entire world.
That is simply amazing!
In the summer of 2024, it was announced that Lamine Yamal had made the squad for the Euros with Spain, but this wasn't a Spanish squad of the late 2010s. This was a young and upcoming team with no stars in the ranks, and with the likes of France, England, Portugal, and Germany all bigger favorites, nobody really gave Spain a look. But this is what makes what happened even more remarkable. The teenagers started each of Spain's 3 group games as the young squad negotiated a tricky group with 3 victories without conceding a goal. However, it was in the tournament's knockout phase that Yamal came alive. The winger was growing in confidence as he notched 2 assists in round of 16 and quarterfinal victories over Georgia and Germany when Spain drew France in the tournament's semi-final. With Mbappe, one of the world's supposed best players in their side, the European Giants won the World Cup in 2018 and reached the final in 2022, and few gave Yamal's Spain team a chance of progressing to the final. In the opening stages, it looked like Spain's doubters would be validated. France took an early lead through Kolo Muani, but Yamal had other ideas. The ball dropped to the Barcelona winger from 30 yards out. He paused for a moment to gain his composure, as if his journey from the streets of Mataró to the mesmerizing lights of the Euro semi-final flashed before his eyes. He shimmied, twisted, and turned to create an angle for himself before unleashing an unstoppable long-range curling effort into the back of the net. Thanks to Yamal's sublime goal and inspiring overall performance, the teenager dragged his dream from the brink of elimination to win the semi-final 2-1. Spain had reached the final of a major tournament for the first time since the days of Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets in 2012, and everybody was talking about Yamal's unbelievable tournament, which consisted of 4 assists and 1 incredible goal. In the final, Spain faced England, a nation with another one of the world's supposed best players, Jude Bellingham. Once again, Yamal seemed nonchalant in the presence of stars the media told him to worry about. Spain dominated possession. Yamal lit up the right wing and intricately provided the opening assist as Luis de De La Fuente's team effortlessly cruised past England to an iconic 2-1 victory. The tournament's biggest names, Mbappe, Bellingham, Kane, and Musiala, landed in Germany with intentions of lifting the trophy and elevating their reputations to godlike status. But it was the skinny 16-year-old from Mataro who stole the spotlight on the biggest stage. And this trend continued the following season. Mbappe teamed up with Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., and Rodrigo to create a Real Madrid team that could retain La Liga and the Champions League for several seasons, but they were unprepared for the generational heights Yamal was about to reach. And by the time Barcelona met Real Madrid for the first time in the 24-25 season in late October, Yamal had already registered 10 La Liga goal involvements in 11 matches. Despite the Catalan club's 6-point advantage in the league, Madrid's arrogance was unwavering as they hosted Hansi Flick's young team at the Bernabeu. In Real's eyes, a team of cheaply assembled misfits and La Masia graduates had no chance of competing with their Galacticos in the imposing Colosseum of their stadium. How wrong they could be. Barcelona cruised to an unforgettable 4-0 victory as Yamal registered his first senior goal against Madrid, and his fun against the reigning Champions League holders was nowhere near complete. Barcelona thumped Madrid 5-2 and 3-2 in the finals of the Supercopa and Copa del Rey as Yamal produced 3 more goal involvements. As the season continued and perceptions of Yamal evolved from the world's best young player to Ballon d'Or candidate, the winger played a sensational Champions League semi-final against Inter Milan that truly was the heir to Messi's throne. During the first leg, with his team 2-0 down, Yamal produced a moment of brilliance that perhaps surpassed his wonder goal against France in the Euros. Barcelona's inexperience and defensive naivety prevented them from reaching the Champions League final, but despite the heartbreak of an aggregate 7-6 defeat to Inter, Yamal's season wouldn't end in vain. With the Golden Boy Award already secured earlier in the season, Yamal had his eyes on Barcelona glory, the La Liga title. In early May, with just a few games of the La Liga season remaining, Barcelona met Real in an El Clasico that would surely determine the campaign's champions. The arrogance of Madrid, having been humiliated by the brilliance of Yamal in Barcelona 3 times that season already, had evaporated, and with good reason. Yamal scored as Barcelona edged to a 4-3 victory, which practically secured the 24-25 La Liga title, as Lamine Yamal proved yet again he was one of the best players in the entire world. Now still only 17 years old, he's in the running for the Ballon d'Or, and he genuinely has a shot at winning it. But what do you think? What we know for sure is that as remarkable as his journey has been, it's safe to say that at only 17 years old, he is still just getting started. But from Barcelona to Real Madrid and from one golden boy to another, this is the story of Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham is one of the biggest superstars in football right now. At 16 years old, he was dominating the championship. At 19 years old, he was dominating the Bundesliga. And now, at 21, he's dominating world football as he's undoubtedly become one of the best players in the world. But despite his insane rise to the top, he's still attacked by the media, being labeled an arrogant, overrated, and overprotected player. But still, he's managed to prove them all wrong. So, how exactly did he do it? How did a little boy from Birmingham overcome every challenge thrown at him to become the best midfielder in the world? This is the full story of Jude Bellingham.
And it's in! What a header! Real Madrid lead!
Jude Bellingham was born in the sleepy town of Stourbridge, a suburb on the edge of Birmingham and about as far away from the Bernabeu as you can get. But still, like every kid growing up, he had dreams of playing for Real Madrid. He grew up watching his policeman dad play non-league football in the 11th tier of English football, and he quickly became young Jude's first footballing hero. But despite playing so far down the football ladder, Mark Bellingham was lethal, scoring more than 700 non-league goals, and was always giving Jude and his younger brother Job tips on what to do. And this seems like it was the secret sauce, as both Bellingham brothers would end up going pro, but more on Job later. One day, Jude's dad returned home and gave him a fake shirt of Real Madrid legend Zinedine Zidane, and Jude thought, that is the player I want to be. But even then, he could have never imagined that he would not only meet his idol one day, but also get to wear his famous number 5 shirt. Now, by the age of 8, Jude Bellingham was already called in to join a youth setup after a Birmingham City scout saw him playing for Stourbridge Juniors, but the challenge was only just beginning because so many youngsters get that far and fail, but Jude was a diamond in the rough, a player who would never back down from a challenge, and what he was about to do would make him a proper Birmingham legend. By the age of 15, he was already playing for Birmingham's under-23s and scoring on his debut, which is something that would become a regular occurrence, and by that point, he was already getting noticed by big European clubs and was mentioned by Football Magazine 442 as one of the most exciting teenagers in English football. But within just 1 year, at 16 years old, Jude was set to face his first huge test. Because after doing so well in the under-23s, now at only 16, Jude was about to make history as he became Birmingham City's youngest ever player, beating the previous record set by club legend Trevor Francis by more than 100 days. But the championship is a brutal league, so any 16-year-old, no matter how good you are, would find it tough, especially playing for a struggling Birmingham. Jude's debut didn't go as planned, and he was brought on as a substitute in a 3-0 loss and even picked up a yellow card. But in the next match, head coach Pep Clodagh knew he needed to give his star youngster a chance, and when Birmingham's winger got injured in the 30th minute against Stoke, Clodagh brought on Bellingham, and our hero rewarded him by scoring his first ever goal in senior football to win the game for the Blues. It might have been a lucky deflected shot, but Bellingham's name was already in the headlines and made him the youngest goal scorer in Birmingham City's history. Clodagh said Jude deserved the goal, and it was a reward for all his hard work. He scored again in the very next game and became a regular in the Birmingham team, and by January, Manchester United even put in a huge £20 million bid to sign Bellingham, but Birmingham turned them down as Jude would end the season in the Championship, making for a historic year for the 16-year-old as he made 40 appearances for Birmingham, being named the Championship Young Player of the Season, proving he was destined for greatness. Birmingham knew they weren't going to be able to keep their young star with top clubs circling the Englishman, from Man United to Chelsea, but the decision was in Jude's hands, and what would choose to be a strange decision for the football world as he announced his departure from the club. Birmingham proceeded to shock the football world by retiring his number 22 shirt, which is generally an honor given to the greatest in the game and not to a teenager with less than a year of pro football under his belt. But as the years would go by, this decision would prove to be iconic to say the least. But for now, Jude decided to turn down the money from the world's biggest clubs and put the focus on his own development as a player. So at 17 years old, Jude got on a flight to Germany to continue his insane rise to the very top of football as he joined the perfect club fit for his development. Now, despite being an English star in the making, Jude Bellingham turned down the advances of England's biggest clubs and instead chose to join Borussia Dortmund because he knew Dortmund was famous for developing young talent like fellow Englishman Jadon Sancho and giving them a chance to shine. The German side paid £25 million for Bellingham, making him the most expensive 17-year-old in history, and upon arriving in Germany, Jude said Dortmund's working-class roots reminded him of Birmingham and gave him a real connection to the city. But the move to Germany wasn't as easy as it seemed, because Jude had to say goodbye to his dad Mark and his brother Job, who stayed in England. So instead, his mom Denise made the trip to Dortmund with him, and speaking about his mother, Jude said even still in 2022 that she makes his bed and that she has a bigger role in his success than any of his coaches or managers. Now, being away from his dad was tough, but Jude was especially close to his brother Job, who was also playing in the Birmingham City youth team and had dreams of following in his older brother's footsteps. But more on that later. Jude made his debut straight away for Dortmund in a cup match against Duisburg, and guess what? He scored on his debut with that goal, making him Dortmund's youngest ever goal scorer, and a few weeks later, he became the youngest Englishman to start a match in the Champions League. Things were going great for Jude, and by the end of the season, he lifted his first trophy as Dortmund won the DFB Pokal Cup, and Jude was named Bundesliga Newcomer of the Season. But that wasn't enough for Jude. He wanted the biggest trophies, and in Germany, one thing would always stand in his way: Bayern Munich. Before he continued his German adventure, he would soon learn that even he couldn't escape the curse of being born in England, a nation that gathers every 2 years to experience what it's like to be a Tottenham Hotspur fan, as Bellingham made his England debut in November 2020, making him the third youngest player to play for England. He was then named to the squad for Euro 2020 and broke yet another record, becoming the youngest Englishman to play in a major tournament. But Southgate didn't trust him on the pitch yet, and he had to sit on the bench as England lost the final to Italy on penalties, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last time he had to sit out and watch his team's best chance of a trophy in years slip away. Back in the Bundesliga, Dortmund looked like title challengers again, and in December 2021, Jude put in the kind of big match performance he would become known for, getting 2 assists against Bayern Munich. But it wasn't enough, as Munich won 3-2 after a controversial penalty call, and Jude was fuming. After the match, Bellingham took an interview and said, "You give a referee who has match fixed before the biggest match in Germany. What do you expect?" These comments landed him a 40,000 fine from the Bundesliga, and it wouldn't be the last time he caused controversy with his comments or gestures, as he would sometimes let his passion get the better of him. As the season drew to a close, Dortmund would finish second, 8 points behind Bayern. But the next season, they would take the title race down to the final day, and Bellingham was no longer a hot prospect, but a team leader, even captaining Dortmund on occasions. But with that responsibility comes even more pressure, which is something Jude was proving he could definitely handle. Dortmund started the season slowly and were as low as 6th when the season took an extended break for the 2022 World Cup. Jude scored his first international goal and had a stunning tournament that cemented him as an international star. But like always, the World Cup ended in misery for England, who lost to France in the quarterfinals. But on his return to the Bundesliga, Jude helped Dortmund go on an incredible run, losing just once in the remainder of the season. He was named as the Bundesliga Player of the Season, the European Golden Boy, and won the Copa Trophy. He also scored a then career best 8 goals, but all that wasn't enough, because with 2 games to go, Bellingham injured his knee, and he was forced to watch the final game of the season from the substitutes bench, where Dortmund just needed a win, but found themselves 2-0 down against Mainz. Jude sat in frustration, unable to change the outcome of the game. Dortmund scored 1, then another in injury time, but it was too little, too late. They lost the title on goal difference to Bayern Munich, and Jude was in tears as he went onto the pitch to say farewell to the fans, even pushing the camera away to hide his emotions. "I was just so heartbroken." Bellingham finished his time in Germany, having played 132 games for Dortmund and scoring 24 goals, but despite the dazzling number of individual honors, he only had his 2021 DFB Pokal to show for it. Bellingham had now conquered Germany on an individual level, and Spain was next, with the summer's headline once again being all about Bellingham, as he was about to make the move that would send his career into the stratosphere and finally fulfill his childhood dreams. Real Madrid had finally seen enough of Jude and decided he must be signed at all costs, so they spent $115 million to bring him to the Bernabeu, making that the largest fee for any English player ever. But English players have often struggled in Madrid. David Beckham was brought in to complete the Galacticos, but the team only won La Liga once while he was there. Michael Owen struggled to get into the Madrid side and was sold to Newcastle after just 1 season. And Jonathan Woodgate scored an own goal and was sent off in a debut remembered by many as among the worst ever. But to make things worse, Bellingham was joining a Madrid side that had finished 10 points off the title and crashed out of the Champions League in the semi-finals the season before. So this begged the question, could Bellingham do any better? Well, his debut was certainly better than Woodgate's, as it took him only 36 minutes before he scored his first goal against Athletic Bilbao in the season's opening game. But despite a great debut, Jude said that you're not a proper Real Madrid player until you win a Champions League. Now, whilst at Dortmund, Jude had been playing mainly in central or defensive midfield, but at Real, Carlo Ancelotti chose to deploy him further up the pitch, meaning he was firmly an attacking midfielder, and unsurprisingly, his goal returns increased. Real Madrid's new number 5 netted 5 times in his first 4 games and 8 times in his first 8 games as he took La Liga by storm, prompting his famous celebration to be born with his arms out wide and head tilted back. And there just seemed to be no stopping him, but Jude was about to face his biggest test yet in a Real Madrid shirt as he entered the game that mattered more than most, the El Clasico. He faced a cauldron of noise at Barcelona's Olympic Stadium, and that noise got even louder in the 6th minute as Ilkay Gundogan scored the opener for Barcelona. But in the 68th minute, Bellingham scored a wonder goal for Real. And then, in the 92nd minute, he scored a late winner to secure victory in the biggest league match of the season, cementing himself as one of the best football players on the planet. And this was being reflected off the pitch, with Adidas making him the face of their Predator boots, the very same boots worn by his idol, Zinedine Zidane. But despite a stellar start to his time at Madrid, things got a lot tougher in the second half of the 24-25 season. A series of suspensions and injuries meant he was in and out of the side and only scored 5 league goals in the new year. But Jude's game is so much more than goals, so even though he wasn't finding the net as much, his performances were still getting better and better until he once again let his passion and aggression get the better of him. In the beginning of March, Real Madrid marched out to play against Valencia in La Liga, where Jude scored a winner with the last kick of the match, but the controversy controversy came when the referee claimed he had already blown the final whistle. Jude angrily shouted at the referee and was handed a red card, meaning he had to miss the next 2 matches. But of course, he would be back stronger, as his next goal was in the second El Clasico of the season. At this time, Jude scored in the 91st minute to win the game for Madrid in a match that effectively sealed the title. And that goal made him Real Madrid's all-time top English goal scorer, above David Beckham, Laurie Cunningham, and yes, even Jonathan Woodgate. He would go on to finish the season as Real Madrid's top goal scorer in the league as they strolled to the La Liga title, finishing 10 points ahead of Barcelona and giving Bellingham the first league title of his career. But there was an even bigger prize to play for, the Champions League. In the quarterfinals, Jude faced Manchester City, who had eliminated Real Madrid the season before, and he had to sacrifice everything for the team, playing in an unfamiliar false 9 role. The match was tight, and it would go to penalty kicks, and Jude said he spent the last 15 minutes of the game preparing for his kick, and that penalties are the most uncomfortable and lonely you can feel on the pitch. But it didn't look like that, because he sent the goalkeeper the wrong way as Real Madrid marched on to the semi-finals to face his former side's nemesis, Bayern Munich. He says his role was just to feed Vinicius Jr., and come the 88th minute, Madrid were down and out until Jude did exactly what he was instructed to do. He passed to Vinny, whose shot was saved, then Joselu scored the rebound before scoring again to send Madrid to the final, where Real faced none other than Jude's old club, Borussia Dortmund, the club that had helped make him a superstar. The final was at Wembley Stadium, and it was tense to say the least, with Dortmund seemingly the better team in the first half until the 74th minute, where Real Madrid took the lead, and then just 9 minutes later, Bellingham passed the ball to Vinny, who scored to seal the win for Real Madrid. Once the final whistle blew and Jude saw his mum and dad in the crowd, he broke down in tears, remembering all the long hours they put in, taking him to training as a kid, and now he was getting an assist in the Champions League final. But this wouldn't be the last assist in a major final that summer, as after celebrating winning Europe's top club trophy, Bellingham would be going back to Germany to try and do what England just missed out on 3 years previously, winning the European Championship. Last time Bellingham played at the Euros, he was just breaking into the England squad, but this time, in Germany, he was the star player with all the added pressure and responsibility that comes with having a nation's hopes and dreams on your shoulders. And he was still just 20 years old at the start of the tournament. England had one of their best squads in years, but there was a problem. 3 of England's best players all played in the same position, and head coach Gareth Southgate would have to choose who to play in attacking midfield, Bellingham, Foden, or Palmer. The fans and pundits called on Southgate to drop Bellingham into the number 8 position, but Southgate kept his faith in Bellingham as his number 10. And in the first game, against the tough defenders of Serbia, Bellingham rushed into the box and threw himself at the ball to score the only goal of the game. England were off to a winning start, and the fans were singing Bellingham's name.
Jude Bellingham's wonder season just keeps on going.
But those songs started to turn to boos as England underperformed against Denmark and Slovenia, and the media got on the team's back. Then, in the last 16 match against Slovakia, disaster struck. Slovakia scored on the counterattack, and no matter how much England tried, they couldn't score. Was this to be Iceland in 2016 all over again? Belief was lost, and fans were leaving early, but those who did missed the moment of the tournament, because in the 5th minute of extra time, a hopeful long throw was headed on by Mark Guay just behind Bellingham, who, out of pure instinct, attempted a moment of madness and scored that goal.
Walker helped on, and it's in!
Who else? The game went to extra time, where Harry Kane scored to send England to the quarterfinal against Switzerland. But this Switzerland side had just dispatched Italy in the previous round and were tough opponents, and with the score level, the match went to penalties. Manuel Akanji missed his spot kick for Switzerland, and Bellingham walked to the spot for England's second kick. Cool as ice, he scored, and England never looked back. They were in the semi-finals against the Netherlands, where a last-minute goal by Ollie Watkins sent England into their second final in 3 years and a trip to Berlin. Spain, though, were unstoppable and scored early in the second half. But then Bellingham gave England a chance as his pass set up Cole Palmer, who equalized, making that Jude's second assist in a major final that summer. But it was not to be, as Spain scored late on to break both England's and Bellingham's hearts. He said when the whistle blew, everything went numb. Jude, in his anger, finger kicked over a water bottle basket, and the English media was on his back once again, labeling him petulant and selfish, and Jude said they always seemed to need a scapegoat, and that time it was him. But despite the struggles at the end of the season, he was still named La Liga's best player, meaning in back-to-back years, Jude had been named the best footballer in Germany and Spain. And he was also in the running for football's top individual trophy, the Ballon d'Or, where he placed third behind Rodri and teammate Vinny Jr., placing him firmly among the world's best. But despite this electric season, the doubters still stood strong, and with a slow start to the 24-25 season, haters began to believe he was just an overrated and arrogant one-season wonder. But of course, Jude has already started to prove them wrong yet again, as he has done time and time again, and still, at only 21 years old, he's surely going to dominate football for the next decade to come, because the only question is, who else? But now we move on to the story of the football player who was told he was too skinny to ever make it pro, Robert Lewandowski. Robert Lewandowski grew up as a skinny kid who seemed more likely to be blown away by the wind rather than terrorize defenses. As a teenager, he was a failure at school. He used to steal cars, drive in illegal races, and get in lots of trouble with the police. But with absolutely nothing going his way, and with all the odds being stacked against him, Robert Lewandowski would somehow rise to the very top of football, becoming one of the greatest football players of all time, scoring over 500 career goals and breaking countless records along the way. But how did this all happen? How did this skinny kid become one of the deadliest strikers in the history of the sport? This is the full story of Robert Lewandowski.
Lewandowski goes through it again! Oh, he just can't do it! You just cannot be that good!
Robert Lewandowski was born on the 21st of August 1988 in Warsaw, Poland, to parents who were already veterans in the world of sports. His father, Krzysztof, juggled between being a professional footballer in the Polish second division and a national judo champion, while his mother, Iwona, was an experienced competitive volleyball player. But the family athleticism did not stop there, as his sister Milena went on to become a pro volleyball player too, and so, with a family tree like that, young Robert didn't have much choice but to grow up with sports in his DNA. His parents had a vision for him from the start, who cleverly decided to give their son an English name as opposed to a Polish one for easier European recognition. As a kid, Robert didn't want to hold back from his family's legacy and immediately set his eyes on football, and his dad made sure he got the right start by taking him to Partizan Leszno for his very first training sessions, and by the time he was 9, Robert was lacing up his boots for serious training at his next club, Varsovia Warsaw. But don't imagine lush green fields and any state-of-the-art facilities. No, Robert began to sharpen his skills on dusty, windy, and rugged fields. Far from fancy, but it was where the magic properly began. His first coach had described him as the smallest, skinniest boy with legs like two thin sticks, and it wasn't just coaches who noticed, as one of Robert's teammates at Varsovia recalled how fragile he looked, saying, "You almost had to worry something might happen to him." And even Robert himself remembers the struggle, reflecting on how everyone told him, "You're too small, you won't make it," which simply lit a burning fire inside of him to prove them all wrong. But despite his behavioral difficulties, his parents believed their son would be special and never gave up on him, giving him all the necessary attention he needed. My dad would take me after school and wait for me for 2 hours while I trained. Then he would come back and get home at about 10 p.m. But just as Robert's football dreams were starting to take shape, life hit him hard in 2005 when he was just 16 years old, because his dad, who was his mentor and biggest supporter, passed away after a tough battle with cancer. And this obviously left an everlasting impact on Robert, who instead of giving up like anyone else would, remained strong and converted this tragic loss into fuel for the fire inside him in order to honor his late father. And eventually, after his 7-year stint at Varsovia, Robert left to join Delta Warsaw, a fourth-tier club that served as a nursery for Legia Warsaw, which still wasn't exactly in the big leagues, but it was another step forward for the determined skinny kid who finally managed to get some minutes in the first team, scoring 4 goals at the end of his first season. When he got promoted to Legia Warsaw, Robert was thrilled and felt like his hard work was finally paying off. But once again, life threw yet another curveball at him by sustaining a knee injury that kept him off the pitch for 3 months. And as a result of this, he was let go by the team after only 1 year. And at the age of 17, this was an expected outcome for him since he was still too skinny, and he describes that day as one of the worst days of my life, and my career was falling apart. But not long after being left without a club, Robert's mother stepped in to save the day, doing everything she could to keep his dreams alive. And by the summer of 2006, after he recovered from his injury, she reached out to one of his old coaches who gave him another chance with a third division team. And this turned out to be the perfect move because Robert quickly began his climb to the top, leading this team to win the Polish third league with 15 goals, making him the league's top scorer. And thanks to his efforts, the team earned promotion to the Polish second division, where he kept shining, scoring another 21 goals and proving everyone wrong. And soon enough, he had his pick of Polish top-flight clubs, choosing to join Lech Poznan in the summer of 2008 for 400,000 euros and making his official debut for them on July 17th, where he came on as a substitute and scored the only goal in a 1-0 victory in an important Europa League game. And soon enough, Robert scored on his league debut, which deemed him worthy to earn his first cap for the Polish national team in September of that year, where he entered as a substitute and got on the scoresheet in a 2-0 win over San Marino. And of course, his hunger for glory and recognition did not stop there, as he helped Lech Poznan win the Polish Cup and Super Cup in 2009, and then led them to the league title in 2009-10 season, where he also finished as the league's top scorer. And by the summer of 2010, after scoring 41 goals and providing 20 assists in 82 games for the club, it was time for the next big step in his career, with interest coming from two clubs, Dortmund and Blackburn Rovers. But thanks to a volcanic eruption canceling all flights across Europe, Robert couldn't fly to England to sign for Blackburn, which gave him the easy choice of accepting the German giants Borussia Dortmund, which would soon prove to be one of the best choices in his career, as his life was going to be taken to a whole new level. Just before his 22nd birthday, Robert joined Jurgen Klopp at Borussia Dortmund in the 2010-11 season for a fee of only 4.5 million euros, and what a steal this would soon turn out to be. But his first season with the German side did not go as planned, as Klopp initially signed him as a backup to the team's star striker Lucas Barrios, which meant Robert spent more time on the bench than on the field. And even when he did get his chances, things didn't go smoothly, as he missed a lot of opportunities, and the Dortmund fans gave him the nickname the Waster. And even Klopp himself admitted that Robert wasn't living up to expectations, saying, "I expected more play, more goals, and better contact. He's not at his level." Robert ended his first season at Dortmund with 9 goals and 4 assists in 42 appearances, and despite winning the Bundesliga, he felt like he didn't deserve this trophy, as he was simply seen as a shadow of the team's star striker Lucas Barrios. But knowing how Robert never lets any obstacle in life block his path, he channeled his full focus on becoming a better player. He knew he was in the big leagues now, and with the thought of his father cheering him on, glory would soon be imminent. So, as his second season with the Germans started, he threw himself into intense training, where he began spending up to 6 hours a day in the gym, working hard to build muscle and improve his strength. And it wasn't long before his dedication started paying off, as he got stronger, sharper, and more confident on the pitch. And in combination with an unfortunate injury for the main striker Barrios, Robert soon found himself as a starter for his team. And a heart-to-heart chat with Klopp about what it would take to succeed in the world of football, Robert stormed onto the pitch 3 days later and smashed in 3 goals and set up another in a 4-0 win against Augsburg. And he later admitted that the chat with Klopp felt like one of those deep talks he wished he could have had with his late father. He describes Klopp as a teacher who demanded A+ students only, crediting him for pushing him to do better, and boy did it work, because Robert turned into an absolute goal machine, scoring 22 league goals that season to help Dortmund edge out Bayern in an epic title fight, and then topping it all off with a jaw-dropping hat-trick in the DFB Cup final, as Dortmund demolished Bayern 5-2, earning his team a well-deserved consecutive Bundesliga title and DFB trophy. But as much as Robert and Dortmund were on top for now, things were soon going to change, as Bayern Munich would be back with a vengeance and deliver Lewandowski one of the most painful defeats in his entire career. But anyways, as we enter the 2012-13 season, Robert made sure to maintain his peak physical condition, which didn't go unnoticed, as all of his teammates and coaches described him as a tank, as he just kept on banging in the goals. And this year, he developed an almost brotherly connection with Dortmund's new superstar, Marco Reus, as the pair made for an unstoppable duo. Robert even went on to break records in the Champions League this year, as he was the first player to score 4 goals in a semi-final game against European giants Real Madrid, which saw this Borussia Dortmund team land a spot in the Champions League final, meaning that Robert had the chance to complete club football already at just the age of 25. But unfortunately, this final was played against Bayern Munich, and as they were hurt from the recent turn in Bundesliga dominance, they entered the game with a desire like no other, beating Dortmund in the final to complete the treble that season, meaning Robert and Dortmund entered the year trophyless. But still, Lewandowski claimed the Bundesliga Player of the Season that year, and he continued that form going into the 2013-14 season, picking up the Golden Boot. But Robert was realizing that he could only go so far with this Dortmund team. He still had his eyes on that Champions League title, and he knew deep down that he needed to move to eventually get it. So just like that, in the summer of 2014, Robert Lewandowski made the move out of Dortmund to sign for their biggest rivals, Bayern Munich, with the goal of becoming the best in the world and eventually lifting that Champions League trophy. And oh, what a transfer this would turn out to be. When this signing was announced, Dortmund fans were absolutely fuming. They lost one of their brightest stars without receiving a single euro in return for the 50 million he was worth, but even more so, he chose to join their fiercest rivals and biggest competition in the Bundesliga, making the sting of his departure even harder to bear. But Robert was laser focused. All he wanted to do was win. So he put all the negative comments aside and kept his head held high, as his duty of becoming the world's greatest striker was not yet fulfilled. Robert also found himself under the guidance of one of football's greatest minds, Pep Guardiola, and it didn't take long for Pep to be completely blown away by Robert's relentless work ethic, saying, "He's the most professional player I have ever met. He thinks about the right food, sleep, and training 24 hours a day. He's always there, never injured because he focuses on these things." Now, ironically, his very first competitive game for Bayern was against his previous team Dortmund in the Super Cup final, which they lost 2-0. But as always, Robert bounced back, quickly scoring his first Bundesliga goal for Bayern in his second league game against Schalke, and the first Champions League goal came 2 months later in a stunning 7-1 demolition of Roma. And this goal-scoring machine continued to showcase his undeniable talent when he claimed his revenge on Dortmund for the Super Cup loss by scoring in a crucial 2-1 win, and when the reverse fixture came around in April, he sealed another victory for Bayern with the only goal in a 1-0 win, which helped Bayern lift the Bundesliga trophy that season. But this didn't come without a price, as later in the DFB Pokal semifinals, he faced Dortmund once again, a team hungry for revenge, not just against Bayern, but against Robert himself. And in a dramatic turn of events, not only did they eliminate Bayern from the competition, but Robert was also knocked out cold after a brutal collision that left him with a concussion, a broken nose, and a fractured jaw, leaving him out injured for a week. But of course, Robert bounced back, eventually being named in the Bundesliga Team of the Year for the third time running after bagging an impressive 25 goals. But the best was yet to come for him, as Robert Lewandowski's second season with Bayern was nothing short of legendary, as he truly found his rhythm and started to show the world exactly what he was made of. And the highlight of the season came on December 22nd, 2015, when he did the unthinkable by scoring 5 goals in just 9 minutes as a substitute against Wolfsburg, in a performance that left jaws on the floor and smashed records in every direction. Pep Guardiola couldn't believe what he was seeing as he stood on the sidelines in awe of the goal-scoring machine. But it wasn't just about one magical night, as Lewandowski kept scoring and became the Bundesliga's top scorer for the second time in his career with 30 goals, which was a career record for himself, and of course, only just a sign of what more was to come. His lifestyle was paying off in a big way, as he was named 4th in the Ballon d'Or ranking for the year, but this 4th place finish wasn't good enough for Robert because he had his sights on 1st place, and he would almost get there. But this would turn into an extreme controversy later on in his career, but we'll get to that soon. Looking to Europe that season, Robert remained unsuccessful with lifting the Champions League trophy, as he and his team once again got eliminated in the semifinals by Atletico Madrid, meaning his trophy cabinet was still missing the ultimate award. Now, kicking off his 3rd season with Bayern, Pep Guardiola moved on to manage Manchester City, leaving Carlo Ancelotti in charge as the new coach, and Robert Lewandowski, now 29 years old, simply was aging like fine wine, as he was just getting better, continuing his unstoppable rise as one of football's greatest finishers, hitting 30 league goals for the 2nd consecutive year, proving that his previous season was no fluke, and Bayern once again won the Bundesliga with Robert leading the charge as their main man up front, and by the season's end, he'd managed to reach an insane 100 goals in 137 appearances for the club. And soon enough, the story repeated itself as Bayern found themselves in a shaky spot after a disappointing run by Ancelotti, leading to Jupp Heynckes stepping in and Robert Lewandowski doing what he does best by claiming another Golden Boot and Bundesliga title with hat-tricks and Man of the Match awards just piling up like snow. Fast forward another season and guess what? The cycle spun again when Niko Kovac stepped in as manager, and of course, Robert kept Bayern ticking like clockwork, bagging yet another Golden Boot, another league title, and topping it all off with a DFB Pokal trophy, proving yet again that no matter the coach or the chaos, Robert was always the king of consistency. But now things were truly taken up a notch halfway through the 2019-20 season as, once again, after a humiliating 5-1 loss to Frankfurt, Bayern sacked the manager Niko Kovac and brought Hansi Flick as an interim manager who constructed a team that didn't just win trophies, they swept them, claiming the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, and finally the Champions League, completing a historic treble with Robert leading the charge as the top scorer in all three competitions with 34 Bundesliga goals, 6 in the domestic cup, and a staggering 15 in the Champions League, which was one of the most historic runs in the entire competition. Bayern began their journey in the group stage with 6 wins out of 6, including a 7-2 demolition of Tottenham in their own stadium and a 6-0 win over Red Star Belgrade, where Robert delivered a jaw-dropping 4-goal haul in just 15 minutes. And later on in the knockout stages, Bayern kept the momentum going with a 7-1 aggregate thrashing of Chelsea, where Lewandowski was involved in nearly everything, scoring and assisting across both legs. And then came the quarterfinals, where Bayern made history with an 8-2 destruction of Barcelona in one of the most iconic matches ever played in the Champions League, with Lewandowski once again on the scoresheet as Bayern's dominance left the football world in awe. The semi-finals saw Bayern brush aside Lyon with a comfortable 3-0 win, leading to the final against PSG, which was not a walk in the park like the previous games as they faced a tough team which only allowed them 1 goal scored by Kingsley Coman in the last few minutes, and eventually awarding the famous title to the truly worthy team. Now, Robert's season was truly iconic, with 55 goals, a treble, and finishing top scorer in all 3 competitions, meaning Robert Lewandowski was nailed on favorite to lift the Ballon d'Or that year. But this is when his first Ballon d'Or controversy arose. France Football decided to cancel the 2020 Ballon d'Or, stating exceptional circumstances, making reference to the pandemic that went on that year, meaning despite the season having been played out till its end, there was no winner crowned, leaving Robert with a bitter taste in his mouth after such an iconic year. But despite this scandalous situation, Robert still got the recognition he deserved when he picked up FIFA's Best Men's Player and Best Player in Europe awards in 2020. And unfortunately for Robert, the same story would repeat itself in the following year as Robert went on to break records once more, finishing the Bundesliga season with 41 goals.
Lewandowski! And finally he does it!
Breaking Gerd Müller's 40-goal record in the league. But this year, the award was handed to Lionel Messi over the Polish number 9, leaving Robert Lewandowski empty-handed yet again. But despite that bitter feeling, Hansi Flick's second and final season with Bayern Munich in 2020-21 was another show of dominance as the team stormed to their 9th consecutive Bundesliga title. But this time, PSG took their revenge and eliminated them in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And soon enough, Flick's iconic journey with Bayern came to an end as he wished to manage the German national team. But his story with Robert wouldn't stop there because, like fine wine, both seemed to get better with time. And fate would soon bring them back together, as we shall see very soon. But for now, enter Julian Nagelsmann, a young and dynamic coach who took charge of the team in 21-22, which would be Robert's last season with Bayern. And despite continuing to be a goal machine at club level and winning yet another league title, capping off his 8 seasons with 19 trophies while scoring an astronomical 344 goals in 375 appearances with 41 hat-tricks, countless Player of the Month awards, and an unmatched 7 Bundesliga Golden Boots, leaving a legacy as one of the greatest to ever play in Germany and a striker whose records may stand for decades to come. But now, at 33 years old, with a new challenge in mind, Robert decided it was time for a new challenge and made the bold decision of joining Barcelona. But this Barcelona side was not the dominant force of previous years, but a falling giant struggling to compete with Real Madrid. But Robert had a point to prove once again to bring them back to glory. Now at the ripe age of 33 and very soon to be 34, most players would have a dramatic decrease in their market value and they tend to make a move outside of Europe until retirement. But Robert, being the athlete he is, obviously chose differently and wanted to remain in Europe, showing that he wasn't satisfied yet. And this led to his transfer to the Catalan giants Barcelona, who in recent years were going through a tough patch, to which Robert licked his lips and accepted to join them for a hefty €45 million fee, a rather high price tag for a 33-year-old player, but for his quality, even double that would have been worth it. And this would soon prove to be the case, as in his first season with Barca under Xavi Hernandez, he and his team managed to hold off their rivals Real Madrid and clinch the Spanish Super Cup and the La Liga title, in which of course he was the top scorer with 23 goals. But Madrid would not let this slide, because in the following season they reinforced the team and took the La Liga crown off the Blaugrana. But this did not stop Robert from carrying on to impress football fans all over the world, because since joining Barcelona in July 2022, he's racked up an incredible 78 goals and 19 assists in 112 appearances, scoring at both European and domestic competitions and becoming the target man in the team's attack. And now, with the arrival of Hansi Flick as Barcelona's head coach in 2024, the duo are once again working together with the aim to bring the same magic to the Catalan giants. And with Robert continuing to deliver consistently on the pitch, his reunited partnership with Flick, along with this new era of Barcelona with the likes of Yamal and Rafinha in attack, they have fans dreaming of more trophies and unforgettable moments in the future. And maybe, just maybe, Robert Lewandowski will get his Ballon d'Or one day. But regardless of that, it's safe to say he's gone down as not just one of the greatest strikers of this generation, but of all time. But from one beast of a striker to another, we have the immigrant who arrived in France alone, but somehow became the most clutch player in football history. At just 5 years old, a little African boy boarded a plane alone and crying as he headed to a different continent in search of a better life. But little did the world know what this boy was going to achieve, as he would become one of the greatest strikers football has ever seen. But this story was far from simple. At 21, he was still only a semi-pro and was on the brink of quitting to become a full-time accountant, but yet he pushed through countless challenges, setbacks, and disasters to become one of the greatest strikers of all time. So, how on earth was this possible? How did a poor migrant become one of the greatest and certainly the most clutch football players of all time? This is the full story of Didier Drogba.
Blues lead for Didier Drogba.
This insane story starts when Didier was aged just 5 years old. A young Drogba sat on a plane for Paris with a label around his neck saying who he was and who he would be meeting, but the problem was that his parents were still in Abidjan, the capital of Côte d'Ivoire, as they could not afford to travel. They wanted a better life for their son so badly that they were willing to send him alone on a flight to France, where Drogba would live with his uncle, Michael Goba. And while this flight was giving Drogba a chance of a better life, it also meant he was leaving behind his family, so when he arrived in France, he cried every day. His uncle was a professional footballer, but Drogba's parents didn't send him to France for football, but for schooling, so he could get an education and a white-collar desk job. So, even though Drogba followed his uncle around the country, moving house every season as his journeyman uncle switched clubs from Brest to Angoulême to Dunkirk, if Drogba fell behind on his schoolwork, then he would be banned from playing football. It was 3 long years until he saw his parents again when he returned to Côte d'Ivoire and played with his hometown friends on makeshift football pitches in local car parks. But soon, economic hardship would strike again, and Drogba's parents would lose their jobs and would be forced to once again send little Didier, or Tito as his mother would call him, back to live with his uncle in France. And at that time, Drogba finally joined his first football club when he started off playing as a right back. His uncle couldn't believe it and said, "What are you doing stuck back there? Get up front." In football, people only look at the strikers. So Drogba switched positions and became a striker, but while he was learning about football, his education started to suffer, and he fell from being top of his class to being held back a year at school. And when his parents found out, they were furious and sent him to live with his cousin and also banned him from football for an entire year. Eventually though, when he was 15, Drogba was finally reunited with his parents when they also moved to France, along with his 6 siblings, in a small home near Paris, where Drogba would join his first semi-professional club, Levallois. But even at such a modest club, Drogba found it hard to break into the senior team, only finally getting his chance aged 18 when he came on for the final 10 minutes of a match. But despite scoring, he couldn't impress his coach, and at the time, Didier Drogba just couldn't catch a break, suffering injury after injury as he broke his metatarsal, fibula, ankle, and even once broke his foot tripping over a sprinkler on the side of the pitch. So no matter how hard he tried, it seemed as though he just wasn't meant to be a footballer. Unlike most players, Drogba had not come through the football academy system, and his body was not ready for the rigors of professional football. Add to that a bad diet of burgers and fries, and you have a recipe for injury. And at that time, it wasn't even clear that Drogba would make it as a footballer, so he enrolled in a university to become an accountant, but he also got signed as a football apprentice at Le Mans, a small club in France's second tier, where he was still a long way from the first team. He was already in his 20s, and time was running out for Drogba to achieve his dreams as a footballer, and it looked as though a career checking numbers behind a desk was more likely. But his coach at Le Mans knew he had a diamond in the rough, saying when he understood he had to work, he became a very good player, and that is how he made up for lost time. And eventually, age 21, much older than the average footballer, he would make his debut for Le Mans in the French second division and would sign his first professional contract. And at that time, his first child would be born, with Drogba saying the birth of his son was the turning point in his life and straightened him out. And that next season, he finally showed why Le Mans' head coach had such faith in him, as Drogba scored 7 goals in 30 games. But once again, he got injured and lost his place in the starting 11, and in the 2001 season, he only played 11 games and didn't score at all, something unimaginable when we think of Drogba now. But the next season, he was back in the team and scored 5 goals, with his all-around play and potential attracting clubs in France's top league, including Guingamp, who decided to take the absolutely massive gamble of signing the unproven benchwarmer Drogba for 150,000 euros at the age of 24 for his first chance to play in Ligue 1, the top tier of French football. But Guingamp were in a desperate relegation fight as one of the weakest teams in Ligue 1, so Drogba was thrown in the deep end as he was named in the starting lineup for a crucial game against Metz, where Drogba made a dream debut and even scored his first ever Ligue 1 goal as his team grabbed a tough away win. But the fairy tale start was not to last, and the coaches weren't confident in him, so he only played 11 games with a total of 3 goals, and while Guingamp avoided relegation, many thought that Drogba would leave the club, but Didier was determined to prove those doubters wrong and decided to stay. And even though he started the first game of the next season as a substitute, he still showed everyone what he could do, as Guingamp were losing 3-1 to the mighty Lyon when the coach finally brought Drogba on for the final 20 minutes, and he made an instant impact and even scored the equalizer in the most unlikely of 3-3 draws. And that game was the spark that lit the rocket fuse of Drogba's career, as he would have his best season to date, playing alongside longtime friend Florent Maluna. Drogba would go on to score 17 goals as Guingamp defied expectations and finished in 7th in the league, their best ever finish. And by now, Drogba was catching the attention of some really big clubs, including the best supported club in his homeland of Côte d'Ivoire at the time, French giants Marseille. Marseille was a dream for Drogba. Back in Ivory Coast, the most popular shirts were Marseille, where Ivorian legend Basile Boli had won the European Cup in 1993. Now Drogba had the chance to become the next player from the Ivory Coast to find glory on the French South Coast. He said that in Marseille, he had discovered a place where people only talked football and where they breathed Olympique Marseille. And Drogba was finally on a big stage that suited his showmanship and big game mentality, and now was ready to announce himself to world football, scoring 19 goals in Ligue 1 with his incredible ability to get in front of defenders and score headed goals from anywhere in the penalty area, as Marseille finished 7th in the league, and Drogba would even entertain fans with improvised dance moves following each goal. But he really came to shine in European competitions, scoring 5 times in the Champions League group stage, including a hat-trick against Partizan Belgrade, before Marseille finished 3rd in the group and dropped into the UEFA Cup, where Drogba scored the only goal against Ukrainian side Dnipro to set up a last 16 tie against Liverpool, where he would score a goal in each leg to cause the upset of the round. Another goal in the quarterfinals against Inter would set up a semi-final against Newcastle United, where, after a goalless first leg, Drogba would score twice in the second leg to take Marseille to the UEFA Cup final. It wasn't to be though, as Marseille lost the final 2-0 to Valencia, but Drogba still finished the season as the top scorer in UEFA competitions, and as Ligue 1's Player of the Season with 29 goals in total, and his shirt even ended up being hung in Marseille's cathedral. But while he dreamed of spending the rest of his career at Marseille and becoming a club legend like Paolo Maldini at Milan, the biggest clubs in world football had now taken notice, including one club in London looking to build a super team with Didier Drogba set to be the spearhead of the revolution. Now, I promise you this story gets a whole lot crazier as Drogba is on a journey to becoming the most clutch player in sports history. But I'm also on a journey, and that's to become the biggest YouTube channel in the football scene. So please subscribe and help me get there. Thank you. Now, back to the football. As Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich just took over, he had ambitions of his team becoming one of the world's top clubs, and as part of his Russian Revolution, Abramovich had just hired Champions League winning head coach Jose Mourinho, who was given an open checkbook to sign whoever he wanted, bringing in the likes of Petr Cech, Arjen Robben, and Ricardo Carvalho. But when Mourinho wanted to sign Didier Drogba, he said the club owner Abramovich had never heard of him and said, "Who is he? Where is he playing?" But Mourinho just said, "Mr. Abramovich, pay, and don't speak." And that's what he did, with Chelsea making a club record bid of £24 million for Drogba, which made him the most expensive striker in English football. And while his other coaches had improved Drogba's technique, he said he learned something more important from Mourinho. From Jose, "I have learned how to win." He got an assist on his Premier League debut as Chelsea beat Manchester United to set down a marker of what they wanted to achieve, and Drogba would score his first Premier League goal against Crystal Palace in his third game. But initially, he wasn't as prolific as he was in France, only scoring 10 goals and having several small injuries and illnesses throughout the season. But it wasn't just his goals that Mourinho signed him for, with his ability to combine the roles of target man and poacher and his incredible hold-up play and technique, leading to a complete change in the style of Premier League center forwards, with teams previously playing with two center forwards, but Drogba's impact making it fashionable for teams to start playing with a single front man. But none of the other Premier League's other strikers were as complete as Drogba, who could do it all with his pace, strength, and anticipation, striking fear into opposition defenders, and his ability to hold the ball up allowed midfielders to constantly get into the box and score, with the Didier Drogba-Frank Lampard combo being key to Chelsea's success, combining for an incredible 36 goals throughout their Chelsea careers. And while Drogba didn't score that many goals in his first season, he scored when it mattered most, such as in the League Cup final where his extra-time goal against Liverpool won the cup for Chelsea. Frank Lampard later said that when it came to such big matches, it was a different Didier, like an animal with intensity in his eyes, and he always produced. The Blues would go on to win the Premier League for the first time that season, setting what was at the time a record high number of points and losing just once in the league and once in the FA Cup domestically in 2004-05, and in both of those rare defeats, their star striker Didier Drogba was missing. In his second season, Chelsea got off to a record-breaking start by winning 9 games in a row, and Drogba really showed his importance to the team, scoring 12, but getting a whopping 14 assists as he kept laying the ball on a plate for the team's top scorer Frank Lampard to bank goal after goal as Chelsea rocked to a second league title in a row. But the British media started to criticize Drogba's style, saying he fell over too easily during games and accusing him of diving, and as a striker, he needed to add goals to his game, and the pressure was really on the Ivorian to perform, as Chelsea had just splashed the cash and equaled the British transfer record to sign Ukrainian striker Andriy Shevchenko from AC Milan to compete for Drogba's place in the team. But Drogba, finally wearing what would become his iconic number 11 shirt, took on this challenge and produced arguably the best season of his career as he started with a bang, hitting 5 goals in the first 7 league games, including a wonder goal against Liverpool, where he controlled the ball on his chest before turning and hitting a half volley from long range, and soon he would get his first Premier League hat-trick against Watford before going on another run of 10 goals in 12 games to finish the season on 20 league goals to win the Premier League Golden Boot Award. But it would be in the Cups that Drogba would really step up as he started to develop a reputation as a clutch player who always scored when his team needed it the most, including 2 goals in the League Cup final against Arsenal and the only goal of the game in the last few minutes of extra time against Manchester United in the FA Cup final, making him the first player to score in both English finals and win them both in the same season. But in the league, Drogba missed crucial end-of-season games against Arsenal and United, and without his clutch goals, Chelsea drew those games and finished second in the league, as Drogba ended the season with 33 goals in all competitions, making him the first Chelsea player to score more than 30 goals in a season since the 1980s. And his incredible feats would lead him to be named African Player of the Year. But his impact on Africa would go far beyond football, as in 2005, Drogba would help his country qualify for the 2006 World Cup by beating Sudan in a World Cup qualifier. But what happened after the game was even more extraordinary, as, at the time, the Ivory Coast was in the middle of a civil war with divisions between the country's Christian and Muslim communities. So, after the win against Sudan, Drogba invited TV cameras into the dressing room and made a speech, dropping down to one knee, putting his arms around his teammates of different religions, saying that the team's win proved Ivorians of all different backgrounds can coexist. Drogba pleaded to the camera, "Forgive, forgive, forgive," as he begged his countrymen to stop the violence and hold peaceful elections. He says players like him have a big responsibility because everyone in Africa believes in football, and the country did indeed hold peaceful elections, meaning that Drogba played a big part in bringing peace to his home country. And that wouldn't be the only time that happened, but first, he had more work to be done at Chelsea, as whilst he had now conquered England, there was a bigger prize that he was after, and to get there, he would first have to go through a complete heartbreak. Back at Chelsea, things weren't looking so good for Drogba, as his rival striker Shevchenko hadn't been getting enough game time, and tensions within the club eventually led to Jose Mourinho to leave with Drogba, saying the Special One's departure destroyed a familiarity he had at Chelsea and that he played first and foremost for Mourinho. Drogba even considered leaving the club, telling the French media, "Something is broken with Chelsea." This, along with injuries and international duty at the Africa Cup of Nations, meant Drogba only managed 8 league goals in the 07-08 season, as Chelsea floundered under head coach Avram Grant and didn't win any major trophy. But they came within inches of the biggest prize of all, as Drogba scored 2 key goals against Liverpool in the Champions League semi-final to take Chelsea to the Champions League final for the first time. But just as the final against Manchester United looked like going to penalties, Drogba got sent off. So instead of taking the decisive penalty, he had to watch from the sidelines as John Terry took the crucial spot kick, but Terry then slipped in the Moscow rain and missed his spot kick, meaning Chelsea had to watch on as the ultimate prize in club football eluded them. And knee problems hampered Drogba at the start of the following season, where he also got a 3-game ban for throwing a coin back at rival fans and was dropped by new head coach Luis Felipe Scolari for Nicolas Anelka in what was a real low point in his Chelsea career. And it wasn't until Chelsea changed head coach yet again, bringing in Gus Hiddink, that Drogba played regularly, so he only scored 5 league goals that season. But typically, Drogba turned up at big moments, scoring in the FA Cup final against Everton as Chelsea won 2-1. And now, with new head coach Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, Drogba decided to stay at Chelsea, and Ancelotti's magic got Drogba firing again straight away, as he registered a goal or assist in each of the first 11 games of the Premier League season, and even a fractured rib couldn't stop him from scoring twice against Arsenal, as Drogba went on to have the most prolific season of his career, scoring an insane 37 goals in all competitions in 2009-10, along with 14 assists, as Chelsea yet again won the league, and then in the FA Cup final, where of course Didier Drogba would score the only goal of the game to win the FA Cup. It was quite simple now. If Drogba's playing at Wembley, he's going to score, simple as that. And once again, he took home the Premier League Golden Boot. But the next season, Chelsea lost a bit of their edge, and they decided to repeat their Shevchenko mistake by splurging 50 million quid on Fernando Torres. Can't somebody tell them they already have the one and only Didier Drogba up front? But Torres got lots of game time at Drogba's expense, and the Spaniard just couldn't score. So, Chelsea completely flopped, and to make things worse, Drogba spent part of the season struggling with malaria, as Chelsea had a trophyless season, so Ancelotti was out, and the latest wonder coach Andre Villaboas was in, but he was soon sacked too as Chelsea bombed in the league, and that winter, Drogba headed off for AFCON, where he led Côte d'Ivoire to the final for the second time in his career, but missed a penalty in the final, as his nation lost to Zambia, proving international heartbreak this time around. Back in London, Drogba scored his 100th Premier League goal, but with Chelsea's season fizzling out, if ever the team needed a clutch player, this was the season, with Drogba yet again scoring in the FA Cup final for Chelsea to beat Liverpool and add yet another cup final where Didier Le Clutch Drogba scored, but everyone remembers the 11-12 season for one thing and one thing only, and that's the Champions League, where Drogba grabbed a key goal in the semi-final against Barcelona, then filled in as a left back when Chelsea were up against the wall to ensure victory, which set up a final against the impregnable Bayern Munich. And Chelsea were massive underdogs, as not only were they at their weakest point since Drogba joined the club, but also the final was being played in Bayern's home stadium, which is an absolute fortress. And when Thomas Müller scored for the Germans on 83 minutes, everyone thought the game was over. But of course, they forgot how clutch Didier Drogba is, as the Ivorian scored a trademark header in the 88th minute to level the game. But in extra time, his foul gave Bayern Munich a penalty, which luckily for Chelsea was saved by Petr Cech. And when the match finally went to a penalty shootout, Drogba made sure he was on the pitch to take a penalty this time, and he took the final penalty to win the European Champions League with his final kick for the club, as he had finally completed his time at Chelsea, winning every single trophy he could win. So despite his Champions League heroics, Drogba's Chelsea contract expired, and he made a big money move to China, joining former teammate Nicolas Anelka at Shanghai Shenhua, where unsurprisingly, he scored 8 goals in 11 games, before saying he hadn't been paid his wages, and so in January, he moved again, this time to Galatasaray in Turkey, where he scored 20 goals and got 13 assists in 53 games, including the only goal of the game in the Turkish Super Cup, and goals against Real Madrid and Juventus in the Champions League. But while his career at the pinnacle of the game looked to be almost over, a familiar face had rejoined Chelsea, as Jose Mourinho had returned to Stamford Bridge, and the special one knew Didier still had it in him. So when the chance occurred in July 2014, Mourinho dialed D for Drogba, and Didier picked up the phone. Mourinho said he is still one of the best strikers in Europe and had the mentality to make more history. People say you should never go back to your ex, but Drogba would prove those doubters wrong. And while he didn't play as much as in his first spell at the club, he still popped up in big games, like scoring against Manchester United as Chelsea won the title again, and also won the League Cup. But then, the time came where Didier Drogba finally hung up his London boots as he finished his Chelsea career with 157 goals, including 9 goals in cup finals, and was the only player to score in 4 FA Cup finals and in 3 League Cup finals, as well as winning 4 league titles, 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, 2 Community Shields, and, of course, the Champions League. Just like his Marseille shirt was put up in a cathedral like a relic, his Chelsea shirt was named by the BBC as the item that defined the 21st century. And these days, the kids of Ivory Coast only wear one football shirt, the royal blue of Chelsea. Drogba finally left Chelsea for a second time to join Montreal Impact in the MLS, where he scored 23 goals in 41 games and led the Canadian club to the Eastern Conference Final before joining USL club Phoenix Rising, where he also became a minority owner and led the club to win the USL Western Conference. And after finally retiring, Drogba spent some time working in Africa to help bring peace and development through sport, as he's shown time and time again that he's a difference maker both on and off the pitch. What a hero.